Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the stream. I hope everybody has had a lovely week, or at least not too crazy. I'm just looking... Yeah, sorry, it's on a different routine. I was just looking for a sound source. Today I have a guest, John Rennie, and we are going to be sat watching both the Night of the Living Deads, the 1968 and the 1990 versions. We're going to be watching them in chronological order, obviously, because that makes more sense than anything. So we'll get started with that in just a few minutes. The links are in the description, so please feel free to pop down there and get yourselves queued up for Night of the Living Dead, the original. And we won't waste too much time because it's going to be about 3 hours, just over 3 hours worth of film, plus a small interval in the middle for us to run off and answer the call of nature or do handstands or whatever the hell it is we do when the cameras are off. And we are, we'll be ready in just a few minutes. I'm just going to, very quickly before I bring John in, I'm just going to show you one little pickup that I got, which is my old film lecturer's book, Hotbeds of Licentiousness, which I'm really looking forward to reading. It is basically about British glamour films and their impact on society and society's reaction to them. So it looks on at these films and the various, shall we say, genres that would be played within these cinemas, and from a sociological kind of position. I can't really read it at the moment because I've got to get my eyes tested, and I think I definitely need some reading glasses. And this is it's a pretty dense book, as you can probably see from there. I will let you know if it's any good, but I'm sure it will because Ben's quite a writer. So I think without further ado, we are going to bring John in, and let's go over to here, and I'll just make sure that you're unmuted. Hello, John.
Hello.
It's good to see you again, mate. It's been a little bit of a while.
Oh, it's fantastic. I'm really pleased we've got it going. I've got to apologise again for last week, but I think we've figured out what the problem was, so we're good to go.
Technical issues with doing this stuff. It is why I say I don't do as many as I would like of these things, just because they get a little bit nuts and a little bit stressful. However, I have kind of managed to, shall we say, refine my workflow a little bit, so it's not quite so bad as it used to be. But it used to be bad. I had to tie myself down to two devices. I'd have one go to a headset, go to my main computer, and another one going to another device, and I'd just wired up more than the bloody lawnmower man.
Speaking of the lawnmower man, did anybody get the 101 release?
There's a new release of it?
Just me?
So somebody did ask about it. Would I do a review on the lawnmower man? I'm a bit like kind of...
Oh, I loved it. I love the Lawnmower Man. I'm a massive Jeff Fahey fan. I think he's a fantastic actor.
I think he's dated.
Brosnan's amazing in that as well.
It's dated really badly.
Oh, that's part of its charm, though. That's part of its charm at the end when he's trying to do all the squares and stuff and he's flipping.
Yeah. Kerry says, so sexy time films, in other words, referring to Hotbeds of Licentiousness. Yes. Yes, it's about that kind of stuff, but it is all that other kind of, all the surrounding stuff. It sounds to me kind of like a canary in the coal mine kind of study of these things. But and
Lawnmower Man 2's got max headroom as well.
Yes, it does, doesn't it?
Hi, what's he called? Not Mick. Matt Frewer, right?
Yes, Matt Frewer.
Yeah, Matt Frewer.
Yes.
Yeah. He was in some cool movies. That guy.
It's not been a lot though, has he? His career never really did.
Clive Barker.
Yeah.
And Mick Garris on. Highway, what was the Highway? The Stephen King short stories movie, Quicksilver Highway.
Okay.
Christopher Lloyd. He's in the remake of Dawn of the Dead, 2004.
Yes, he was, yeah.
The Stand for television, he played the trash can man.
Mm-hmm. But he's always been kind of, secondary or tertiary characters,
Yes.
Considering he was like, I mean, when Max Headroom came out, it was hot shit, wasn't he? It's like everybody loved Max Headroom. That character was phenomenal.
Must have been weird when he walked into the room and they're like, "You're not Max Headroom."
It's looking back at how they did it all.
Well, why is he not glitching?
It's looking back at how they did it all, and because they go, it's all computer graphics. The only thing that was computer graphics was the background.
Adam got it. Adam got the. I got it too, Adam. I got the 101 release. It's great, isn't it? Some awesome special features on there. New ones too.
I will have to give Lawnmower Man another watch sometime. But I do.
I mean,
remember.
I was growing up then. I think it's nostalgia, you know.
Yeah.
For me, that was. I mean, they were movies I was renting out of the video store. So I mean, it's I've got a soft spot for it. But I love Jeff Fahey. It was. I've actually got the signed poster over there. Iron Mazer, Jeff Fahey. I met him when he was at the Cambridge Arts doing the best man.
Okay. Okay. I don't think would have been there then. Sure, I would have remembered that.
It was Martin Shaw. It was when Martin Shaw was doing it. The Go. It's my favourite play. That's why it was amazing. The Gore Vidal play, and it was Jeff Fahey and Martin Shaw. And can you remember Honeysuckle Weeks? Mm-hmm. She was in the Wicker Tree, the Wicker Man sequel.
Yeah.
She was in it too. She was really surprised I knew the Wicker Man sequel. I went, oh, it's nice to meet you. When I really enjoyed the Wicker Tree, and she was like, did you? Nobody else did. That's what she was pretty cool. That's what she said to us.
Yeah.
I was like, well, I was putting it on a bit thick. I didn't enjoy it that much. She went, there you go.
A little bit of honesty.
It is. Kerry seemed very different from the story. Oh, Lawnmower Man's very different from the short story. Definitely. It was about the god Pan, right, Kerry? The Stephen King short story? He comes and eats the grass and then eats the guy.
The Stephen King adaptations are kind of weird sometimes, aren't they? I mean, what was like the Langoliers and things like that.
Oh man, Tom Holland's The Langoliers.
Yeah,
that's another one I rented. I've got a soft spot for that CGI as well.
Such a weird film.
It's awful CGI.
Oh, it's not just the CGI, is it? But some of the characters, because you had Bronson Pinchot's
Mr. Toomey. Toomey.
And he just
scaring
goes,
the little girl.
You see, it's absolute comic book.
Oh, it's beautiful, man. I love it. I love what do you call him? Dean Stockwell? Like what do you mean, dear boy?
Indubitably, old boy, kind of thing. Yeah, he's this sort of
probably
Sherlock
trying to do
Holmes.
like Holmes and Watson.
It was so awful in so many respects, but it was very enjoyable.
So much my glasses fell off there. My glasses keep steaming up. It's so hot in here.
Right, okay, so folks, we're not going to hang around too much more. We'll give it a couple more minutes, so make sure that you're all hooked up with the original Night of the Living Dead. The link is in the description if you haven't got it already. And start giving me a thumbs up when you're ready, and we will just bullshit for a couple more minutes. And
let's keep talking about the Langoliers.
Let's talk,
as much as I do.
Or shall we take over the entire stream? Let's not bother watching the movies. Let's just talk about the.
I mean, if anybody is interested, Tom Holland has just actually released the original teleplay to be bought on Amazon as I think it's a buy to order book, so you can buy Tom Holland's original Langoliers teleplay now on Amazon. I ordered a copy about 2 days ago.
Oh, that's awesome. I love the idea of the Langoliers. It's like what happens to time when it's passed.
Aye, well, you can't go back and save JFK because the Langoliers ate him.
Did they ever explain? Did they ever? I can't remember because it's been such a long time since I've seen it. Did they ever speculate on where the time comes from?
I can't remember. Kerry, I don't know. Kerry might know because she's a big Stephen King fan as well. Kerry, right? I can't remember. I remember the short story was in 4:past midnight, I think.
I kind of get the feeling that the Langoliers kind of go into the future and it's their shit that is the present, and they go back and eat their own shit.
It's fantastic. I mean, Kerry's right. We should just do a stream about bad Stephen King adaptations. That would be a great stream.
Or maybe, this is better because the Langoliers are all mouth. That they actually have a longer body than that, and it slips through a little time warp and then goes into the future. So on the other end, it's not the mouth, it's the butthole.
So it's like a circle, and they're constantly eating themselves.
Yeah, it's like a kind of shit eating Ouroboros.
You're right. Like they've got no bellies, have they? They're just nothing but hairs and teeth.
I'm sure we can get something going with that. Right, okay, let's get things sort of up and running. I'm just going to get my tablet ready. Am I on the right one? I am on the right one. Fantastic. All right, you ready, John?
Yep.
Fantastic. Okay, so we will start on the count of 3 and go on go. So 3, 2, 1, go.
That opening music gives us chills every time.
It sounds so retro, though, doesn't it? It's
Man, it's amazing.
It's 1968, and this film feels like it's more like from 1958 in some
And this
respects.
is all needle drop music, nothing composed for the film. He just went to the library and bought the tracks because it was cheaper.
I mean, they had next to no money to do this.
It's to do with his editing. I mean, he edited the music too.
Mm.
He didn't just edit the movie, he edited the music to fit the movie.
Hello, John.
It really is. It's just beautiful.
You just dropped out for a second there, John.
All right.
Sorry about that. I think.
Oh, that's all right. I was just saying how iconic the opening shot is. It's just magic.
It is. I mean, this is the thing. George Romero. I've always said he's this microcosm guy. Most of his films, his most highly regarded films, are a small section of society. It's a very small picture for a bigger picture. But when he does this, it's like with Dawn of the Dead and Day of the Dead, they open up with this sort of vista, essentially, this image of the world that you're in. Dawn of the Dead, it's them kind of like, they're small society in the TV studio, and then you get to see what's happening in the wider world, and then you're stuck in the mall. Day of the Dead, it opens up with them flying across Florida.
Yes.
Seeing what's happening in the big cities and all that kind of stuff, and for the rest of the movie they're stuck in the caves.
Silo, yeah.
Night Riders is kind of like you got them sort of touring around and all that kind of stuff, but then the movie sort of concentrates much closer on the community. So that's always been the kind of thing that he seems to do really well, and this is sort of a prototype for that in many respects, in my opinion.
Oh, definitely. I mean, he sets up all of his career with this movie. I mean, the television stuff that he did. I mean, most of it is, like you see, in microcosms, and that's when he works best. He works best when it's a smaller world. He shows you the world you're in, then he brings it into that microcosm, and that's when he works his best. When he tries to open it up too much, like Land or Survival, it loses it a little bit, Even though Survival, I guess, is the two rival families. But it's too big.
Certainly with Land, it just loses focus on kind of much in the way of commentary. It seems much more like RoboCop than it does. It seems more Paul Verhoeven than it does George Romero.
I know what you mean. It's a lot more comic book like Dawn, I think, as well. It's really stylized, which was, I know, was a big leap for a lot of his fans. I know it was for me. I wasn't used to seeing Romero quite that stylized.
Yeah.
And it was, I mean, the first time I went to cinema to see Land, I didn't like it. Since then, I've come around to it. I've watched it many, many times now. I really like Land.
I don't think I hated it, but at any point. But it's not been one of those really inspiring ones of his.
I was kind of gobsmacked when I left the theater from seeing it. I was on a date, and I came out, and she just said, "It was John. You're trying to talk yourself around to liking this movie. Just admit you didn't like it."
I love this conversation that these two, Johnny and Barbara have in the car, and it's a lot of exposition. But again, a lot of the exposition is really kind of opening up the wider world. They're a long way from home, and all that
it sets up exactly who they are. It sets up who Johnny is. It sets up who Barbara is. I really like the dialogue in the scene.
Yeah.
You can tell the brother and sister. I mean, the Crazies is the same. The Crazy starts with a brother and sister. The two before the house burns down. And you've got the kind of brother and sister relationship there. I don't know if that was something that was in Romero or was in a couple of his films. But, Martin with his cousin, the family.
Yeah.
I guess a lot of it's about the family unit. But I love this. I mean, this is just the magic of cinema. Romero just put the camera where he thought it should go. He didn't quite know how to make films yet. He knew from his advertisements how to tell a story with the Calagon story and all that, and those beautiful little ads he made for Iron City Beer and stuff. But man, this is just perfect. It's organic filmmaking. It just feels right, but it's not wide shot, mid shot, close up. It's where the camera should go, I think, and I really like that about it. It unfolds organically. I know that's a bit of a pretentious word, but that's what it feels like to me. It doesn't feel like there's cuts. It just feels like it flows perfectly, but it shouldn't.
It is a very natural kind of editing style. There is something about it that just feels not contrived.
And I love the gothic element as well.
Yeah.
I mean, that's Frankenstein to me. It was when I was a kid. I thought that was Frankenstein the first time I saw it. This kind of lumbering monster in the background. It feels gothic, the lightning striking, but it's unmistakably modern at the same time. Because of the clothes, because of Johnny. Johnny's a hip, cool 60s guy, you know?
With the Buddy Holly glasses. And
yeah.
Restaurant
nails it, man. It's here with the glove. I was talking about this in a video I made about it recently. It sets that up perfectly.
Yes, it does. Yeah,
that's perfect storytelling. So it makes a big thing of him putting the gloves on, so that at the end, when his hand comes around the door, it's Johnny. It's perfect. That's masterful storytelling.
I mean, that's when you sort of know that he was thinking of the film as a whole. When you notice things like that, because it could be very easy to mistake him later or miss the fact that it's him. Despite the fact that she's screaming the name, there's that visual element of him coming back, but he looks very different by that point.
Oh, totally. I mean, we can get into it, obviously, with Night of the Living Dead 90 later, but they tried to do the same thing in 90 and they didn't quite get it. They set him up with the gloves, and then, I mean, we'll get to that, but it doesn't quite work. It was a play on the original that didn't quite work. I mean, look at the handheld shot here coming over the monster's shoulder. He turns, she grabs him. You know, you think it's a joke. It's just perfect. It really is.
It kind of puts you in her head. I mean, the film is her point of view.
Yes.
When it comes down to it. There's no other narrator in this film, as far as I'm concerned. It is her story. I mean, we should talk about the actress a little bit as well, Judith O'Dea. She's clearly not the most experienced actress.
No, in fact, she'd gone to New York to try. She left Carnegie Mellon in Pittsburgh, went to New York to try and become an actress, and then she always found it really funny because George called her back and said, "Would you come and audition for our movie in Pittsburgh?"
Yeah.
And of course, this is what she's most known for now.
Yeah, she's a little stilted in this first bit, but I mean, it works for the rest of the movie. A lot of people do kind of criticize her for the way she delivers the lines and all that kind of stuff. But I've always felt the character is, one of the most human characters in
definitely
the piece.
I mean, it's like she's the character that we all hope we won't be if this happens.
But you know
what I mean?
you would be.
Yeah, but we would be, exactly. I mean, you hope you wouldn't go catatonic, and you hope you'd be Ben and you'd try and lock the doors, or you'd be, at least, what do you call him? The kid, man. Who's down in the basement with Cooper.
Yeah.
What's his name? Judy Rose and... Oh, man, I can't believe I forgot his name. Just got an advert I've got to skip.
Yep.
There you
go. YouTube Prime, I don't need to miss it, skip, unfortunately. Well, say fortunately. But yeah, she is very, very much the character that... it's what you would more likely be like after this kind of trauma. You've got Ben, who's more of a sort of an aspirational character in that he's a kind of take charge kind of guy. Cooper, who's the antagonist, but also a very kind of take charge kind of guy, and a clash of personalities between the two. But they're both of them, to some degree, or one degree or another, are a kind of much stronger characters than Barbara is in terms of her fortitude. But I've always felt that Barbara is the character that, that's who most of us would be.
Definitely,
in this situation.
If that happened, and we wouldn't want to be. But I think that's who we would be, and I think that's the power of it. I mean, Romero always said that he regretted it for the rest of his career. And that's why he tried to make Laurie Cardell so, I don't know, kind of Ripley-like in Day of the Dead, the powerful one.
Yeah.
Because he felt like he didn't do a service to her character. He felt like he just made her the screaming chick,
Yeah. And I think that's probably being a little harsh on himself.
I think so too. I really like her character.
Yeah.
I mean, she brings us into it, and it's a perfect introduction to the film. I mean, look at that shot. Every shot is iconic here. Every shot. The house, her running around the corner, her stopping at the gas pump.
Mm-hmm. It's building the world around the house. Yeah. That's the thing, isn't it? Because all these things are important as the story goes along. Because if that wasn't there, it's like, well, where the hell did that come from?
Yep. It's just, he was doing all this himself.
Yeah.
I think it was a 35mm blimp that had the Ariflex, I think. Because he said they'd sacrificed some of the profits and bought a 35mm camera.
Yeah.
I know some of it was it shot 60 and then blew up to 35?
I think so.
I mean, you can tell they've got limited lighting there, just with the two. That's two lights, and you can really tell it's two lights with the barn door shut.
It's very theatrical as well.
It's part of the film's power as well, I think.
Yeah.
That's what's missing later in the remake. This lighting is beautiful. It's almost expressionist.
It's very reminiscent of Lynch's work later.
Totally, aye. The long shadows. Look at that, man. It's a shadowy, dark house.
And very shaped light. You know, it's not the instinct for a lot of filmmakers is just, you know, you got to see everything. Same with theatre people. You got to see everything. You got to see everything. Yep. So you flood the set or stage with light, and then it feels very flat. It feels very three-dimensional with all the shadows, the directional light, and all that kind of stuff. You get a feeling of contours and patterns and the difference between, because it, like for this scene, for instance, with the two rooms, you're looking through a corridor. You wouldn't get the depth if you just lit it all evenly. It just looked very, very flat.
I mean, they were doing the best they could with the limited lights, and that's why I know we've talked about this before. And we've said the magic of this film is partly the accident that they were inexperienced, low-budget filmmakers. Mm-hmm. And the film is dark to a degree that it was this dark because they only had a couple of lights. The house didn't have power to it.
Yes.
You know, there was no running water in that house. They had to get washed in the stream outside. Vince Stravinsky, the guy who shoots Ben at the end, he's the guy that did all the squibs and things. He was a local firework guy in Pittsburgh. He built a bridge so they could drive cars over it and stuff and get the kit to the bridge over the stream. But I mean, no electricity, no running water. It was all generators, you know.
It sounds like Evil Dead, doesn't it? It's like similar kind of shoot.
Was proper. I mean, it was let's make a movie, and that's the magic of it, right?
Yeah.
And I think they were influenced by the gothic horror tropes. I think in it.
Oh, absolutely.
And I mean, that totally works for the film. It's totally not. It's unabashed about that. You know, it's influenced by. Pardon me. It's influenced by these old black and white movies that Romero grew up watching, the same as Carpenter and all the other guys, you know, Hooper and stuff, that they love too. I
think the choice of music is again, it's a very old-fashioned kind of music, even for the time.
Oh, well, it's like because it was library stuff from the 40s that he was using.
Exactly. You know, it just, the whole film kind of smacks of being 10 to 20 years out of its time, somewhat, but it is, you know, in other respects, it's a very very modern film in that, you know, this film did a lot of stuff that most other films didn't do.
Oh, yep. Well, it was the let's go for it, right? I mean, Romero was saying, I was reading the EC comic books, I was seeing the gore, you know, there was fun with the gore, there was a reason for the gore, it was people getting their comeuppance with the gore, and he said, why aren't people doing this? I've never seen this in a movie, let's just do it.
Yeah.
You know? He's so cool in that respect, man. I mean, I've got a lot of respect for the guy. But, I mean, he's cool in that respect that he just did it, like Herschel Gordon did it, you know, and the other guys, they just went for it.
John says, these days making a movie is 100 times easier for young filmmakers. It sort of is and it isn't. I think the process of making films is just as difficult. You just have different tools. Making a good film. I've been
really enjoying Sean Baker's work, the guy who did Tangerine with the, I think it was the iPhone 6. Mm-hmm. I bought like 2 or 3 of his movies, Red Rocket, the Florida Project, and Tangerine. And his films are really good. And he uses mobile phones and stuff for his. So I can see where you're coming from, John, with it. But like you say, Glenn, it's the tools, right?
Yeah, it's different tools is what you've got. And the process of still making a story is very much... the same kind of challenge. It's just you've got different ways of doing it. Some things are easier. You've got more access to much better equipment, but what you do with that...
Battery-powered lighting and stuff, I mean, that's a godsend. And in the films that I've worked on, the battery-powered lights, when we've been out in the middle of nowhere shooting little horror movies...
Yeah, well, I mean when you're talking about...
It's made all the difference.
You're talking about, like, Blondes and Redheads, which are lights, for those who don't know, TV lights. They used to draw one hell of a lot of power. You know, you're talking up to 1,000 watt, depending on what type of fix you were using. So it's
really
that's a lot of
interesting.
juice.
The Captain's just said there, you might think Lynch and Romero were both inspired by Carnival of Souls. Captain, that's actually one of my favorite movies of all time, along with Night. I think the influence of Carnival of Souls is kind of spoken of in hushed tones, because what Herc Harvey did with that and Gene's organ score, it's unbelievably cool, unbelievably original. And that was a guy making a movie just because he wanted to. He never actually did another film. The rest of his work was industrial films. I managed to dig some of the industrial films out that Harvey made, but that's a really good point, Captain. It was, I think they were influenced by Carnival of Souls, and Romero said so himself, if I remember rightly, that it was an influence on him.
Yeah, you missed the Bosco chocolate syrup.
Coming down the stairs.
For those who don't know, the blood in this film was this stuff called Bosco chocolate syrup. I think that's exactly what it was.
I thought it sounded quite tasty when it was dripping down.
Yeah, and they went, well, it's got the right consistency for what they want. You can't tell it's not red on camera, but it's got that same depth of colour. And that's the thing.
Advert here.
People don't kind of realise necessarily when you're filming in black and white. That colour does still make a difference.
Yes.
You don't appreciate the colour on camera, but there are obviously you want contrast and all that kind of stuff to happen. If you look at the old days of television, the really old days of television, it's very early stuff. They would wear the most ridiculous kind of makeup. They looked like bloody zebras or something. It was that bad because the TV was low resolution, the contrast wasn't so good, so they had to do that so you could actually see their faces.
Did you ever see Abigail's Party?
No.
I watched that the other day. It was I think it was it Ken Loach? It was one of Ken Loach's early TV ones. I was watching it on YouTube. It was really cool, but like you say, the makeup was really overdone in the 70s, so that it would even show up. So watching it in HD, it looks 10 times oranger on the people's faces.
I love this sequence.
I know it's great, and it's all the camera angles too. I mean, he couldn't show the tire iron going in, not because he didn't want to, but because they didn't have the budget to do it.
They couldn't do it. Yeah.
I mean, later on, we can get into that in 90. They've got the retractable one when he sticks it in the guy's head, which is kind of, it's not shot for shot, but this is John Russo coming in here, the John Russo zombie. But he just makes it work. Yeah. It's like what that guy says on Project Runway, Tim Gunn, make it work. And Romero just did. And it was all off his own back, man. I saw him in an interview with Del Toro not long ago. And it was just before he died in 2015. He died 2017. And it's on YouTube. It's when Del Toro met Romero, I think it's called, if anyone wants to check it out. And he's so tired, Romero. He says, I've spent my whole life telling people, we can do this. And he says, when you do that for 60 years, man, it gets pretty tiring. He says, that's what I was doing. I was the guy that was saying, we can do this, and rallying the troops. And, he was the driving force behind a lot of the movies. I mean, when you see the Crazies and stuff, what was it? The Crazies, Martin and the Witch, Jack's wife, Season of the Witch. He was really experimenting in those too, man. I mean, you can see he wasn't a filmmaker quite yet until it.
I'm going to interrupt just for a second with that shot.
No.
My God.
It's beautiful, isn't it?
It just incredible.
I mean, look at like you're saying about the high contrast lighting. When you watch it in lower res versions, you can really see the contrast, and it works for the film. When I watched this on VHS, it worked for the film.
I think the first version I ever watched this was the Hal Roach coloured one.
I've actually I brought a few different versions to look at. So we've got So I did get the DVD for the Hal Roach colorized version recently because I've still got this on VHS, but I wanted to get it on disc because I've got fond memories of it. I actually have the video advertisement framed. I don't know if you can see it behind us. That's for the Hal Roach one, the colorized version.
Yeah. Because
that was one of the first ones I saw in early 90s. I saw the movie on television, bought it not knowing it was colorized, even though it said they scream louder in color on the front. But I took it home and I was like, this is a Night of the Living Dead. What's this? Looks like somebody's colored it in with crayons.
Yeah, yeah. It was the first version I saw because it was on VHS and it was cheap.
Yep. Forefront Video released one. I think I had the Forefront one of the Scream Louder in color.
Yeah, I had the one just before that, I think. It was like the initial release of it on VHS. Adam says it can't can't be said enough how awesome Dwayne Jones is in this classic film.
It is. His performance is fantastic, isn't it?
He's really good. I mean, actually, it's kind of interesting because he's, for me, is not only just a wonderful part of this film, but he also kind of like speaks a lot to me about George Romero's filmmaking and how open it is to interpretation, because there was always that discussion about, it was breaking down barriers, and George Romero's always been like, well, it wasn't really the intent.
It's a white truck driver in the script. I read the original script.
It is, yeah. The original
white truck driver?
The original story is a little bit... actually, no, I'm thinking Return of the Living Dead. Oh, God, that was awful.
Well, funny, we won't get into that later on, but the guy who plays Tom, that's what the guy's name is, Tom, the young guy, it's Tom, who plays Tom in the remake, Bill Butler, actually wrote Return of the Living Dead 4 and 5.
They were kind of weird offshoot, weren't they?
They were strange, like television movies. I remember them being on the Sci-Fi Network a lot.
Yeah, the original Return of the Living Dead was absolutely just one of my favourite films. But the original script for that, what they say it was based on.
I really like Part 2. I mean, even though it's the same movie again, but but I mean, they did that with Evil Dead 2, right?
Yeah.
But the captain's just said Season of the Witch isn't horror. I would kind of agree with you.
Yeah.
It's almost Bergman-esque.
But it's not much of a Romero movie either. At least Romero didn't think so.
No, it is. It's a strange one. I mean, he said he was watching all the Bergman stuff. So he said I put loads of dream sequences in it and things. So like when she's walking through the woods and the twigs are hitting her in the face and she looks in the mirror and sees her older self. He was putting all this metaphor into his work and stuff. But he kind of had to figure out that wasn't for him. He wasn't that kind of filmmaker, but he had to figure it out. And so I would kind of agree. I don't think Season of the Witch is a horror. I'd say it's a drama thriller. I would say just because of the murder in the end. And he shoots the murder really well, which is kind of a precursor to Martin when Martin's in the house. I think it was kind of a testing ground for the great scene where Martin gets the two people in the house who are having the affair. But yeah, I'd agree, Captain. I don't think it's a horror either. I think I'd say it's a dramatic thriller, I would say. Beautiful scene with the music box as well.
Yeah. I always kind of felt it sort of reflects her state of mind. She's sort of regressing somewhat.
That's a good point. I'd never thought of it like that, because she does totally regress now and goes into a catatonic state pretty much, right?
Yeah.
Oh, those damn doors, man.
I like how just all that wood's kind of stored underneath the kitchen tops.
That reminds me I must fix my skirting boards as well.
Yes. Just comes in with a box of matches. I found wood. Just tried to nail up the windows with matches.
He uses, you know what it is? I mean, I can't count how many times. I mean, I'm sure it's the same with us and most of us on the stream, how many times we've seen this film. But this is the first time I've really started to notice all the low angles, because I'm watching it on a different screen. I'm watching it on a much smaller screen to my right here. But I've noticed all of the low angles that he's using.
There is... I don't think I could go quite so far as to say documentary feel. It's more... There's this kind of... I suppose cinema verite, if you want to.
Definitely. I would say that too. But that's an accident, I would think.
Yes.
Because he shook the camera on his shoulder and said, right, let's shoot this scene.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
But it lends the film that edge of chaos, doesn't it?
It's fantastic, man. It really is. It gives it that kinetic energy. And it spurs the edit on. Like I was saying before, how much of it... Look at that little zoom there. Because he's such a good editor. And he was... I reviewed The Crazies for the channel not long ago. And I heard him talking about The Crazies. And he said, give me 100 bad shots over 3 good shots any day. Because I can take 100 bad shots and make anything out of it. You give me 3 shots, like the Hitchcock, the wide, the medium, and the close-up, then I can't do anything. I've got to edit dictated by what's shot. And he likes the freedom of the edit, so he shot loads of different angles. And he always did that, and especially in The Crazies, you can see that. When you get the drum beat, and he edits to the drum beat. I mean, that's really good editing. That's almost MTV editing before MTV. He's editing to the tunes.
Well, you said he had a visual element to his editing, didn't he? In terms of he'd have that white leader tape.
Definitely.
So you could get the rhythm. Boom, 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 boom. So he approached editing like music.
Yes, I would think so. And it's driven by the scene. When you need to speed it up, he speeds it up with the editing. When you need to slow it down, he slows it down with the editing. I mean, right now when there's no music, the first time in the film, I think there's only been one scene before this without music.
Mm-hmm.
When you hear the telephone. And this is getting to be Dwayne's big performance, right?
They do seem to have a cricket infestation, though, don't they?
That was apparently they just couldn't shut the cicadas up. That's actually they were actually there that loud.
Yeah.
Because none of this, he didn't know what ADR was when he made Night of the Living Dead.
No.
So I mean, all this is live sound. So the cicadas, that's really the cicadas.
Well, ADR tended to be much more of a European thing anyway.
It was crazy when I was reviewing Creepshow.
Mm-hmm.
And Romero said that was the first time he'd done ADR on Creepshow. That was, 1980? Was it Creepshow?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, a bit about that.
Right. But I said that was he didn't know what ADR was, and the guys were saying, we'll do it in ADR, and he was saying, what's that?
No, I mean, obviously, with the European film scene, it was much more to do with the fact that they were going to dub it into different languages anyway, so... they'd save themselves the effort of recording live. Plus, half the actors couldn't speak the same language.
Yeah.
So there was no point in recording on set.
Yep.
Whereas, US filmmaking of this kind, independent filmmaking, was aimed at a domestic audience, really. I mean, I don't think they really had much of an eye on an international audience.
Oh no, not at all. I mean, when you talk about Gordon or Herc Harvey, when we're talking about Carnival of Souls before, they made those to play on drive-ins, earn them a couple of grand back, and then that would be it.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I bought I Drink Your Blood the other week on Blu-ray, and there was an interview with the director, and they were saying that they never thought that there'd ever be a Blu-ray or a DVD or a video or anything. They made that film for a couple of grand. They wanted to get a return on the money, and that was it. Same with Craven, Last House on the Left, right? They actually made that to be a B-movie shown at the beginning of other movies in theaters, owned by a chain, and that approached Cunningham, and and I guess Romero had the same thing in mind for this. He just wanted it to play drive-ins, get him the money back, get his name on the scene.
I love this scene because it's one of the few scenes where he begins to kind of like be a bit more. How you would imagine anyone would be, a lot more kind of upset about what's going on. But the thing that does make me laugh is because now Barbara's talking, and he's like kind of, oh god, she's...
And I goes, just calm down, Johnny Guns, just calm down. just sit there, calm down.
Yeah.
Let us tell my story about the trucks and that. All right.
I do find it kind of funny how her story differs from the stuff that we've just seen now. It's kind of there's significant changes.
Well, yeah, totally.
You can put it down to, she's basically so astonishingly upset that her head's a mess.
Yeah. Well, she's just seen her brother fighting some kind of ghoul, and somebody chased her relentlessly. She got stuck in this house in the dark. She's with this guy she doesn't even know. And that's what's so cool. I think you're totally right that he does give himself too much of a hard time about Barbara. He does. That look from Ben there, all right then.
Yeah, oh god, here she goes.
And it's totally Resident Evil 2, right? Was it Resident Evil 2 with a truck that plows into the diner?
Yeah.
I always think the first time I played Resident Evil 2, when it came out for the PlayStation, was it PlayStation 1, right? I remember thinking, that's Ben's speech from Night of the Living Dead. The truck plows through all the zombies. I've got another advert here. There you
go. Just make sure we're on the same page here now. I'm at 29 and 30 seconds.
Yep, good go.
Yeah. Keep calm, which means shut up. He's not a very sympathetic character, and this is one of the things which I always find fascinating in the characters of George Romero. That you get some very human characters, and then you get some very selfish characters,
Yes.
very empathetic characters. And you can see that in most of the films. Which is one of the reasons why I like Knight Riders so much, is because Morgan, Tom Savini's character, goes from being this rather sort of self-satisfied swaggerer out for himself, but then he realises, what this community actually means to him by the end of the film.
You know what the smile is, right? When you talk about Tom Savini and Knight Riders? It's Tom Savini lying with a cod piece,
yes,
with nothing else, surrounded by women.
But it's wonderful though, because I mean, you see that shot in isolation if you haven't watched it.
It's a rip-off of a Burt Reynolds photo shoot.
It kind of is, but you could see he's absolutely miserable in that, and it's ridiculous. And this is what the character realises: is he's become this parody of what he's
gone corporate.
Meant to him, yeah.
He's gone corporate. He's become a corporate thing. He's become an item to be bought and sold, and that's what it's not. That's what it's not about. That's what the Knight Riders aren't about. They're about freedom, doing what you want to do, being your own boss.
I mean, it's my favourite Romero film for the characters more than anything.
It's hard. It's hard for me to choose it. I mean, it changes. It really does. I'm a big Day of the Dead fan. I mean, I partied with Dawn and Day. I really did. When I was a kid.
It's a very 60s moment. Calm down, woman.
Sidney Poitier wouldn't have done that, would he?
He might have apologised after.
Well, I always thought about that, because in the heat of the night he slaps the guy back, Sidney Poitier. But I was watching a really interesting documentary about this, Birth of the Living Dead, which was about Night of the Living Dead. I can't remember who directed it, but there's lots of people in it, like academics and stuff. Ernest Dickinson's in there talking about it, and Larry Fessenden, who I love, he's in there saying how much Night of the Living Dead influenced him. And they all talk about Ben's not like the other actors of the day. He's not like Sidney Poitier, because he does things that Sidney Poitier would never do. It's not like To Sir With Love this, or Guess Who's Coming to Dinner. This is somebody punching somebody else.
Yeah,
somebody taking charge of the situation,
I think it actually kind of speaks to George Romero's almost kind of like race blindness when it comes to that character, is because that moment where he strikes Barbara has been seen by some as being an incredibly controversial thing, because it's a black woman striking a black man striking a white woman. But it's not made a big deal of. It's not malicious either. It's not like
no, he understands that to survive the situation, he's going to knock her out because she's going to hinder him surviving. It's Ben's
right
pretty jealous. Well, not jealous. He's pretty single-minded on survival, as is Cooper.
Yeah.
But they've both got their different modes of survival.
I mean, I've also it's one of the weak, to show the weakness of the character on occasions.
Yes.
That he has to resort to that.
He does.
Yeah, he's a very unempathetic character. I mean, because a lot of people do sort of go, the character of Ben is, he's a hero, and he sort of is and he isn't. This is the thing. Most of the characters are flawed in some ways. Probably the most innocent character in it is Barbara.
Yes.
Between Harry and Ben, they're both capable of being pretty much bastards, and both capable of being right and wrong, which is an interesting dynamic.
It is, and I mean, race is never mentioned in this film.
No.
I mean, he does bring it up in the remake. I think Savini says, "What about you people yourself?" No, he says, "You don't look like neighbours yourself," which is about his race. That's the only time it's mentioned in any of the two films. But it was, like Romero said, it was the 60s. We were all hip, young, cool guys, and we thought we were being hip.
Yeah.
By saying it doesn't matter if we cast Dwayne Jones. It doesn't matter.
You got
but
Ben
it was
with
actually
the
a big
torch.
deal.
You got Ben with the torch here, and one of the things is as crisp and as clean as this film looks, fire in this movie always ends up just completely blowing out there.
White it out.
Which shows, how dark everything must have been, to get this very gothic look. But yeah, there's the one thing that's always bothered me. It bothered me more with the colorized version, because then it just looks like this really weird sort of thing. For me,
I love it. I mean, I do love, like we were saying before, I do love the colorized version, and I will watch it on occasion because it was one of the first times I saw it on VHS.
I was very tempted to use the colorized version just for a laugh, actually, but
no, I would have been up for it. It's been a while since I've watched it, but I bought that DVD in a set. It was a lot of the Hal Roach colorized versions got remastered and released on DVD, not Blu-ray. But they did The Last Man on Earth, Bride of the Atom, I think, the Ed Wood one.
Yeah.
And it was The Black Cat and Night of the Living Dead. And it was only about 15 quid, and I thought, I'll get them and see what they're like. I did buy I think it was Boulevard Entertainment released the colorized one a while ago, but it was unwatchable. It was just a VHS, really bad pan and scan transfer on a disc.
I love this radio stuff that goes on, because you get a lot of this, not just in this, but the other films as well. Well, certainly Dawn, of all this kind of snippets from the outer world. And again, it's George Romero sort of just taking a peek out the window to see what's going on. I
mean, you start to realise watching these two back to back how much a lot of it is shot for shot. I mean, there's a scene of Tony Todd literally with a screwdriver hammering off the door.
Yeah.
You know? A lot of it is shot for shot. But that's the world building, right? Like you see the radio stuff, that is the world building.
Yeah, it's a lot of world building goes on in this.
I absolutely love it. It's a subgenre I actually really like, which is radio stations at the end of the world. You've got like the Nightcaller from the 70s. There was Pontypool in the mid-2000s. Got the kind of Bill Moseley remake of that, Dead Air, with Patricia Tallman, actually, who were both in Night of the Living Dead 90 and Armies of Darkness. But it's a kind of subgenre I really like. Radio stations at the end of the world, because I think it lends itself to the horror of not knowing what's outside.
Well, it's a bit of a more naturalistic way of having a narrator, essentially, isn't it? And it doesn't make a big deal of it. It's almost drowned out by the music, but you can just hear it in the background sort of going off, and you can hear that chaos going on, and that happened in Dawn of the Dead.
Yep.
And the commentary,
one of my
basically.
favourite scenes in Dawn.
Yeah, I mean,
when the static's on the TV, and Galen Ross gets up and turns it off, and then he gets up and turns it back on. I love that scene.
But that's the thing, because you see this
well,
disintegration.
you know the world's gone.
Yeah, you see this disintegration of the world around them in these little snippets in the broadcasts, and then the disintegration of society is probably much more complete when there's nothing else coming.
I mean, when there's no reruns of Frasier on the telly anymore, you know the world's really over.
So when the Simpsons final season finally airs.
When the Simpsons are over, that's it.
But then you got Day, and it's mostly talking about the fact that there's this absence of contact.
You know, John Smith, you just said people forget the countryside is really dark. That's true. Me and Glenn were talking about this, comparing the two versions later on. I mean, we'll get into that later with the second film. But I think this is like what it would be like. And that works for the character when he looks outside and all you can see is what the window light shows you. I mean, that's terrifying. I mean, even when Cooper's throwing the Molotovs later on, all you get is what the fire shows us. And that's horror. You know, that's the gothic element that I mean. I really dig that about this movie, the darkness of it.
Well, as a lighting person myself...
It's very bright, but we'll get into that later. But the remake is very bright, which I don't think goes very much in its favour.
As a lighting person myself, and I run into disagreements with directors all the time, when I kind of have this philosophy with lighting that it's as much about what you don't light, at least don't like completely, as it is what you highlight. Lighting is all about drawing attention to certain things and accentuating things and setting a mood, setting a feeling. Obviously, colour in this is not an issue, so they use those long shadows and stuff to really kind of pick out the structure of the building and give dark corners that you don't know what the hell is in those shadows, you know.
Exactly, it's beautiful, isn't it? I mean, that scene there, coming up the stairs, the blood smeared on the wall when he puts the rifle down, and the music kicks in, and Ben's, taking the body away. It's I mean, this is all real horror. It's hiding the face so you can't see the makeup really well.
I mean, this is not naturalistic lighting when it's on that close-up of her, as if, for instance. It's,
Exactly.
you see all those deep shadows, and
It's a
her
nightmare.
face is only kind of half lit.
Yep.
And that's where he gets all that depth from it. Even such a small set,
Definitely.
it feels like there's space.
It is a beautiful close-up, that, isn't it?
It is.
But, I mean, he did the same in Martin, didn't he? So, I mean, it wasn't... So I'm seeing some of it's by accident, but obviously a lot of it's his style. Because he did the same in Martin. There's a beautiful scene in Martin when Martin's on the roof, and he's just lit by the moon. And obviously that's, you know, the vampire perched on the roof at night. But, man, it's a beautiful, lonely shot as well. And he nails it. He's got the darkness of the bridges coming out into the light in the city. So,
Yeah.
I mean, it must have been done with some intention. So maybe I was giving him a little bit too little credit earlier on when I was saying a lot of it's a bit of an accident.
No, I don't think that's necessarily. You know, I think sometimes it is circumstances. If you've only got X amount of lights, sometimes you necessarily have to light less, or you know, you like more specific things, and then you know from that, you know, if you're smart, you build a style, and you
Yes.
are consistent with what you do. And that's always a big problem, big challenge with any kind of artistic endeavour, is consistency. Whether it's in the writing, lighting, the directing, the camera work, consistency will take you a long way.
He's definitely consistent. I mean, right through his career. I mean, you can see some of this in D, I would say, with the darkness.
I do love it. The guys sort of like, you know, been down in the basement going, fucking, what was all that noise?
I know, Cooper's cool, man. He is. I really like Carl Hardman and Marlon Eastman, right? These two own their own business.
Yeah.
So all the sound gear that they used to make the film were Carl and Marlon Eastman's sound gear. They also did the makeup for the film.
Yeah.
I don't think they were married, but I think they were in a relationship. From what I gathered from interviews and stuff, because she always kept the name Marlon Eastman and he was always Carl Hardman. But I think they might have been in a relationship then. But man, these are non-actors too. How good is Cooper? I mean, this guy's never acted.
Natural.
He's brilliant.
Yeah.
And Keith Wayne there, playing Tom. Oh, I've got another advertisement. Keith Wayne playing Tom. He was a local singer, right? And they put him in the film because they thought that he might get some of the younger crowd in, because Keith Wayne was a local lounge singer, right? Like a 60s lounge singer.
Sure.
Kerry, I'm looking out here in the windows, blacker than the night on a moonless night. It's just how I take my coffee.
See, this is, you know, the beginning of this antagonism. Another motif of George Romero's, that the bigger problem is ignored in favour of the small argument. And it is common. It happens in Dawn, it happens in Day, it happens in Night Riders, it happens in a lot of his films. That I've said for a long time that the zombies in a good zombie film necessarily are in the background. You know, they're not the thing that drives the movie. They are this thing, this pressure, which is basically testing these people.
It's the old saying, right? You can't see the dark for the trees. You know, that's the thing. That's what Romero always said. If they stopped fighting each other, they'd be alright.
Yes.
and they actually do touch on that much better in Tom Savini's version. You know, when she says, "What's the problem, man?" You know? But we can get into that later. But he was always like that. You know, I mean, if Rhodes got along with what do you call her? Cardell's character in Day of the Dead,
Sarah.
You know, Sarah, things would have been a lot easier.
Yeah.
You know, if everybody was a little bit more laid back, like John and McDermott, things would be a little bit easier. But they weren't. But McDermott and John needed their help more. You know, they could have all helped each other more, just like these. I mean, Cooper doesn't care about Barbara at all.
No.
He's just saying, "Who's this? What's she doing?" You know. He just cares about him and his family. But you would if that was your kid in the cellar.
And that's the thing, isn't it? Because they've both, you know, they've all got points. It's not as clear cut as saying Ben is the hero and Harry is the bad guy. Harry
I don't think he is.
I
don't think Ben is a hero.
Yeah.
I never did. I never thought. I mean, he smacks her in the mouth.
Yeah.
I never thought he was a hero. You know, Sylvester Stallone wouldn't do that. But I never thought he was. But I always knew that this was a different kind of movie, and that's one of the reasons I love it. It is a different kind of horror movie.
Well, sort of the sound in this scene is a little bit weird because it is a bit sort of wet and mushy, isn't it?
Yeah.
Not that that's a bad thing necessarily, but it does give a very kind of weird, muted sort of feel to the movie. Obviously, sound is incredibly important in any movie. It can really transform a scene from being very, very flat to being something which is incredibly
Totally,
dynamic.
I know. It's like I was saying before when he was saying he wasn't quite sure what ADR was yet. You know, he was still figuring it out, and that's probably him with a knife on a board. You know, doing it. I mean, I love it listening to the Crazies because I am a big fan of the Crazies and the remake. But the Crazies, almost every voice in that movie is George Romero. Mm-hmm. Every soldier's like, oh, hey, I'm sorry. Almost all the voices are George Romero in the film if you listen to it. The guys on the radio are George, the soldiers are George, you know.
Should have been David Lynch, because that would have been funny.
But I'm guessing he was learning his craft all the time, man.
Yeah.
You know, all the time. So by the time we're getting to Creepshow, Night Riders, Day of the Dead, he's a really good filmmaker. You know, you can't. I mean, in terms of technical flaws, you can't fault Day of the Dead, Night Riders, and Creepshow. They're all perfectly made films. Mm-hmm. You know, perfect. There's no flaws there at all. I love that sound, the sci-fi sound. It sounds like it's from Forbidden Planet in the background. Probably because it was from some library somewhere, but it's perfect for it.
But he did a lot of that even in Night Dawn. I mean, there's
That's actually
a massive part
Cooper's
of the...
wife playing a zombie there, the woman from the basement, Marilyn Eastman.
You're a tiny bit behind me, I think.
Oh, sorry, I'll skip it forward. Where you're on?
4705.
4705.
4710.
All right.
Okay.
It's damn adverts. They're asking us to pay for Amazon again now. I already pay for it, and they've asked us to pay for it again to get rid of the Amazon adverts. I can't believe it.
God damn it.
Oh, John used to live on Lindisfarne. I've holidayed on Lindisfarne loads. We used to go to the Causeway, where when the tide comes in, you can't get back across the way. It's a beautiful island. I don't know, Captain, that's an interesting point. Because did Shivers rip off Night of the Living Dead and Rabid off the Crazies? David Cronenberg has actually said, I love Cronenberg, I'm a huge Cronenberg fan too, and he actually said he wasn't influenced by Night in the terms of the film, but he was influenced by the fact that in the 60s, almost everybody was influenced by Night in the fact that they said, we can do it. If George Romero can do it, we can do it. Carpenter said the same. Because Carpenter said Assault on Precinct 13 is also influenced by the kind of siege aspects of Night of the Living Dead. But I've heard Cronenberg, I think it was actually on the old Shivers DVD from Prism. He talks about it and he says it influenced him in the fact that it made him want to give it a go. And I guess the confined tower block. He always thought the tower block is a ship, right? They called it the Starliner. And he thought of it as a ship, I think, didn't he? Am I right, Glenn, there with Cronenberg?
Oh,
yes.
The hotel.
Ship, didn't he? The hotel.
It's kind of presented as being a ship.
Was it Starliner Towers or Starboarder Towers?
Something like that, but they sell it like it's a cruise.
Yeah.
Which is,
but I think definitely influenced by it.
That aspect of the movie is kind of probably because of stories of outbreaks on a ship and the whole fact that if you get that, it's a very contained, you got nowhere to go kind of thing.
Yep. There's so many cues again. Like I say, I was watching little snippets of Savini's remake to get ready for this tonight with us, and Ben keeps running out of cigarettes in the remake, and I wonder if he got that from Cooper there, throwing the cigarettes away. But I think
anybody got any cigarettes?
These two knew each other as well.
I think
So I
cigarettes.
guess that made it easier to do the discourse and the dialogue because they were business partners, right?
Yeah. I just cigarettes seem to be a thing, don't they? In at least this and Dawn. Anybody
Well,
got any
well,
cigarettes?
the Surgeon General was telling you to smoke in the 60s, right?
I guess it helps you deal with the stress of a zombie invasion.
If the zombies attack, 6 a day, I'll keep them away.
They won't want to eat you.
That's interesting. Captain just said there's some say the alien ripped off Shivers because of the parasite, and the acid to burn out someone's stomach after reproducing there, and which also enters through the mouth and leaps onto people's faces. I can see that, and I can see that, definitely. Well, I mean, it was the Terror from Beyond Space. I always thought was the biggest influence on Alien, because O'Bannon and Carpenter were like big sci-fi fans. Carpenter loved all the old sci-fi movies, and so did O'Bannon. And there's a movie called The Terror from Beyond Space, and it's almost beat for beat Alien. An alien gets on the ship. They can't escape, but it's like a rocket ship, though, like an old 40s, 50s rocket ship. And the alien chases them up to the top, and they've got to get up to the top, and then they kill them with atomic radiation or whatever it was, because it was the 50s. But that was supposed to be a big influence on Alien, Captain. The Terror from Beyond Space. But I can imagine O'Bannon was definitely influenced by that, because he was a big film geek as well.
Mm-hmm.
Just like us.
She's the voice of reason in this, isn't she?
She is the mother, Cooper.
You going upstairs or I'll divorce you?
So Judith Ridley, who plays Judy Rose, she was in There's Always Vanilla.
Mm.
And she was the protagonist in There's Always Vanilla, which was Romero's kind of riff on The Graduate, right?
Yeah, it's another one of the films that he kind of sort of disowns, though.
Yeah, I've
it's
seen
like
it. He was talking about it. He hated it, didn't he?
Yeah, gun for hire kind of stuff. I mean,
Right.
it's funny though. I mean, obviously you can watch those films and still see George Romero in there for sure. But it's also a feeling that it's not quite his movie. Season of Witch as well.
There was compromise from what I heard. It started off Ray Lane,
Mm-hmm.
the guy who's in it. It started off being a kind of an advert for his acting.
Mm-hmm.
So they wanted to give him a show reel.
Yeah.
And then someone said, "This is pretty good. I'll give you 25 grand if you can expand it and make it into a movie."
Mm-hmm.
So then they expanded it, tried to make it into a movie. It didn't work at all. And then Romero shot all those pieces to camera, where he's kind of looking at the camera like Alfie, the Michael Caine movie, kind of telling you the story and saying, "Yeah, man," talking to the camera and trying to be hip and cool, and it just didn't work because it wasn't the film that was written.
No.
He just edited it all together, and it didn't feel quite right. Like you see, Romero himself says he doesn't think much of it.
Mm.
I was surprised the amusement park got released because he was a bit of a stickler for not releasing the work that he wasn't sure about.
Yeah, I mean that is a fascinating little piece of his filmography, and yeah, kind of terrifying as well.
Oh no, Barbara's licking the doilies now. She's really gone.
No. You got to get your sustenance somehow. You can't be this terrified for that long without sucking on a doily.
But it gives them, it gives Mrs. Cooper. It's some kind of. I think she really cares.
I'm Helen Cooper.
He's totally right. That's the thing,
I know.
He's totally right, Cooper. He really is.
I think he should have gone into more detail in critiquing the carpentry, though.
Well, that's his thing. He can't communicate. The whole movie's about people that can't communicate. If he could just communicate to them properly, they'd probably work together and they'd get through the thing. But he can't. He can't communicate with them. I mean, that's a big thing in Day of the Dead. Communication. They can't communicate with each other.
Mm-hmm.
They can't communicate to the mainland. I think communication was a big thing in his movies. Human communication. Same thing in The Crazies. when they're trying to talk, the damn radios don't work, you know?
Yeah.
They can't tell each other what's happening. And then at the end, because the radio doesn't work and the crazies, the virus, the cure for the virus gets lost because the radio didn't work.
Yeah.
Oh, man, I've got adverts galore on this.
He's such a dick.
I mean, this is pure drama now. It's getting to pure, like, you can be boss down there, I'm boss up here.
Yeah.
You know, it's like being in a rock band. Somebody's got to stand in the background. But this is beautiful, isn't it?
Which one's Lennon and which one's McCartney?
Oh, I don't know. Like, I'd say Cooper's McCartney. This guy also plays a zombie who gets shot at the end, as well as being a new broadcaster. And he actually was the local news broadcaster. But you're right in that this stuff does work in building the world really well.
It does, because I mean, it's one of the things with low-budget filmmaking is, you know, especially of this nature, you can't, you know, feel the money to film a much bigger world. So you have to sort of bring that information in somehow, and you don't really want it to be a voiceover type thing in the most obvious kind of way. So how do you put that exposition in? And this is how it's done. And you can just imagine if you were in this situation, you would be glued to some form of television, trying to figure out.
Well, we were, right? During COVID, we're getting all our stuff from the weekly bulletins. Oh, the dialogue's so good though as well. It's scary. I mean, it doesn't scare us anymore because I've seen it 100 and odd times. But the first time I saw this, that's what I liked about it, is that it scared us. And I was a child. I was a kid. I was really young. I'm talking about really young, 5, 6, 7-year-old. When I saw Night of the Living Dead, and it scared us so badly that it made me think, man, films can do something. And that's why I've always been a Romero fan, because he did that to us. I mean, I remember the, what do you call him? Not Gene Siskel, the other guy. Roger Ebert.
Ebert, yeah.
Roger Ebert saying that he went to see this on a double bill during the daytime. And he came out of the theater and he said, I think that full theater of 5-year-old, 6-year-old, 7-year-old kids didn't know what had just hit them. He was like, they were watching that along with Lugosi's Dracula.
Yeah.
And this was the B movie with it, you know?
Yeah.
And he just said those kids were so scared out their minds because they had no way of dealing with the terror that they were watching. And of course, that review really helped spread word about the movie.
This is one of the funny things. I mean, it's kind of realistic in some respects, but also a little bit kind of hokey. Is the trying to give an explanation for what's going on? It's like, okay, it's a satellite brought a space virus, and that's kind of cheese. But
well, that's one of Romero's things, isn't it, man? I always wanted to meet him just to see. In the first one, it was the Venus probe, right?
Yeah.
Because afterwards, he was always like, God changed the rules, man. There's no reason for it. God changed the rules, man.
Yeah.
And I was thinking, no, you didn't. In the first one, you said it was the Venus probe.
I mean, when you sort of compare it to kind of maybe real life events, you know, these stories do change what you think was the cause may not have been the cause and all that kind of stuff. So you can kind of explain it away. So it's not like a deal breaker or anything. But the whole kind of idea, I mean, it's... I kind of wonder in some respects if, you know, like something like the Andromeda strain didn't have a little bit of this in it.
Oh, I would think so. Definitely. I mean, it's a probe that brings the virus back in Andromeda strain.
Yeah, that film I found terrifying as a kid.
Oh, me too, mate. Flipping Robert Weiss, man. I mean, I know he did Star Trek the movie and stuff, and Day the Earth Stood Still, and was it Sound of Music?
Yeah.
But man, very underrated filmmaker. You never hear him get mentioned in The Breath of Kubrick and stuff.
No.
But when you watch Andromeda Strain and Day the Earth Stood Still, those are way out there, cool sci-fi concept movies. Yeah, I mean, Star Trek the Motion Picture was kind of a way out there sci-fi, kind of influenced by 2001 a bit.
Yeah, just a bit.
Just a bit. But Andromeda's Dream, the way he edited it, the way that the slides come down and you see the different views, man, that's really hip and cool. And it was he was a really good director, Weiss, and I think he never gets, probably because he did Sound of Music and stuff, he never really gets talked about in the same breath as some of the greats, but he really was one of the greats.
We're on our way up to Blueberry Hill.
Kerry just said, why am I getting Donald Trump vibes when they said they are eating the pets? They are eating the pets of the living.
Oh, God, let's not even go there, my God.
I know. That is true, Captain. There is no more room in hell, but that was the second movie. The first one was the Venus probe.
In this one, there's no more room in the basement.
There's no more room in the countryside. We need to get into that too on Night of the Living Dead 90. Where the hell do all those zombies come from? They're in the middle of nowhere. I mean,
Maybe there was
10, there's like maybe 10, 20 here, right? And you can understand why they're scared.
Probably made their way from Woodstock.
Man, this is scary. This scared me the first time. About the cadaver, the trunk.
Has no arms and legs. It's like this is where Frankenstein were working, wasn't it?
Well, I think that's where O'Bannon got the stuff from in Return of the Living Dead. You know, when they just got the trunk and it's moving. I think he tried to give a nod to the first movie. I think.
Hitched a
ride from Philadelphia. I do too, Captain. I love the Sound of Music. I'm a big Robert Weiss fan. He's a really good director. He just seems to get blown over for some reason, and I don't know why, but his films are fantastic.
You know, one film of that kind of ilk that I've really got to rewatch is Chitty Chitty Bang Bang.
It's pretty freaky, isn't it, Chitty Chitty Bang Bang, if I remember rightly. Dick Van Dyke was only 60 years old when they made that.
He was always 60 years old. He was like born 60 years
now
old.
Or something, isn't he? I'm just kidding. He was in his 40s or whatever. But man, I love that when they jump into the painting. I really love Dick Van Dyke. I was a big fan of Diagnosis Murder growing up. I used to love the show he did when he was the kind of surgeon detective with his son. See, this sounds like a good plan and it should work. It does. It sounds like a good plan. I used to work as a chef in a bar in Gateshead called the Black Bull. And the chef I worked with was a big Dawn of the Dead fan. Yeah. And we used to make up ways of which we could barricade the pub if the zombie outbreak ever happened. And we'd see, well, that wouldn't work because Cooper tried that. He tried doing that.
We've got 14 barrels that'll last us 2 weeks.
But we'd see we could lock those doors. We've got enough food in the as long as the electricity stays on, we've got enough food for a couple of weeks.
And the gun over the bar, it's real.
6 pints down to the Black Bull. We'll sort it out.
Wait for it all to blow over.
Them two had cameos, didn't they, in Land of the Dead? Edgar Wright and Simon Pegg?
Yes, they did. Yeah, they were the two zombies in the bar that were kind of like, they were up there like piñatas.
Oh man, this is it. This is the beginning of the end. When they're starting to think, right, we'll sort this out, we know what we're doing now. Oh, man, you don't.
We're a team. Go team. Harry's like, fucking hell.
I know, Jeff, we'll just stay in the basement, lads. We'll be alright.
But my basement.
Look at him, though, he doesn't want to do it. And the telly's saying, don't flipping... don't do it. Just like, we're going to do it anyway. Oh, this scene's great, man, with Tom and Judy. When he talks about Remember the Flood. Mm-hmm. How many you got done? 2? What the fuck? Come on, man. There's a zombie apocalypse out there, Judy. Gonna rip these sheets faster.
Tear like the wind.
It's cool though, man. It is when he's like, come on, man. It's proper character building. Remember last summer or last winter when we had the flood or whatever? No.
That's the thing. It's the thing, though, isn't it? Romero does take time out for the characters just to have moments.
Aye,
You know,
he does,
like
aye.
with Day of the Dead, you've got them kind of sat in the trailer, just sort of coming to terms with each other,
Yep.
apart from anything else. Things like that. Characters have always been so important to him.
Oh, John's a cool character in Day of the Dead. I really like that whole speech. When he's like, maybe he just said we're trying to get too smart figuring his shit out.
Yeah.
I really like that speech. It's one of my favorite bits in the movie because he's just like, why do we even care? Let's just go.
Yeah. Just find an island and spend our time soaking up some sun.
I mean, this is kind of that moment for Night of the Living Dead. It's like, let's just go. We'll sort it. We'll get to the pump. We'll get the flipping gasoline. We'll hit the road. We'll be alright. You would if you were friends, but they're not.
It's like with this whole escape thing that, they got this sort of plan. Of course, in Dawn of the Dead, you've got them fleeing. I almost feel like Dawn of the Dead was like, if this plan had actually worked, that it would be kind of a similar situation. They'd have found themselves in some backwoods little village with just a tiny little shop. So, can we find out a way to sort of live on laundry detergent or something?
We've got 47 boxes of Jacob's crackers.
Yes.
Don't knock it. It's got its own packet.
That's one of the weirdest delivered lines in the film. Oh, I'd like to leave. Yes.
I'm just going to quickly grab a can of beer before the cookout happens. I'm just going to quickly run down. I'll be 2
Go
seconds.
get your beer. Chitty Chitty Bang Bang is like Mary Poppins on more acid than Mary Poppins is already on. I kind of agree. More of those damn crickets.
I didn't want to. I wanted to have a drink for this bit because I really like it.
Well, when
Then
you're
when they
having
get
barbecue, you've got to have a beer.
It's just one of the best build-ups ever. The way that they set it up. Oh, and then there's another flipping YouTube advert.
See, the vision of the zombies in this is just, I mean, it's been sort of noted. It is so much different to zombies of previous films, because these are ordinary people.
Totally.
They're your neighbours. I think that's one of the things that makes the film that much more disturbing, because it sort of plays with the familiar. That fire stunt must have been a game.
I don't get along with my neighbour at all, right? I mean, can you imagine if we were stuck together? I mean, but that's what it's like, right? It is. Or the people across the road would have to come in and would have to sort it out.
This fire gag, the guy gets set on fire.
It's Russo,
right? Must have been quite something to actually try to pull off with.
It's John Russo. He put a really baggy suit on and just did it. He said he bought a suit that was about 3 sizes too big. I'm pretty sure that's John Russo.
Independent filmmaking, ladies and gentlemen. If you wonder why there's so much kind of lack of responsibility in professional filmmaking, it's because people did shit like that.
Look at that, man. That's fantastic. This is great when she runs outside as well. It's really exciting. And she looks back and she's like, what? And he's like, oh, well then, if you're going to come.
Oh, dear.
See, this is we'll get into this in the remake, but he really messes this bit up in the remake. it happens here so fast.
Mm-hmm.
But he plays around. He plays around with it too much in the remake. There's no action to it. It's awesome. This one with the truck.
The feeling of this scene, though, just because there's not many of them out there. They get out there, and then suddenly they're all just almost imperceptibly just builds up all of a sudden.
I think it's the fire, because it's like they make that mistake a lot. Pardon me again.
What do you think they're moths?
well, the zombies are attracted to the action. I mean, that's another thing in the remake that they really point out, is that it's the sound that brings them.
Yeah.
If everybody just chilled out and hid in the basement, they would have been all right. If they hadn't been banging and shouting and clattering, and the zombies probably wouldn't have came.
This is the moment where you kind of go, Ben's an absolute moron, isn't it?
It is. They're totally unprepared for this.
Oh, it's like not only carries fire near to a petrol pump, decides to shoot the fucking hose.
I know. What's the torch? Man, this bit with Judy, I love. Because that's it. It's like when she says that line, it's coming in a sec. Oh man, they're trying so flipping hard. It's just, but that's the thing with the handheld camera, the kinetic action. This is really good. It just builds and builds and builds.
See, everything would have been all right if you hadn't decided to throw yourself outside and follow them.
This is it, I know. Well, that's it then. A jacket's court. I just love that. I think it's a perfect build-up. My jacket's court. Well, that's it. It is. It's just perfect. It really is. Well, that doomed at that.
So I take your jacket off. I can't. This is really expensive.
I know. It's just like, well, that's it then. Bang. I just love it. I always loved that. It's one of my favorite sequences in the movie. That's why I was a little bit quiet there while I was watching it. I really love that scene. And now he's stuck outside with all the monsters. Sorry, the ghouls.
Yes, because that's the thing, isn't it? He never described them as zombies.
But that darkness, it's like what was it John was saying before about the darkness being, the countryside darkness being so dark, you can really see it here. And it makes it scarier how dark it is.
It's a combination of that and the fact that, when cameras intrinsically have difficulty with that kind of contrast.
Oh, especially in the 60s.
You've got to light them well enough to actually be visible on the screen, so everything else necessarily goes away. Photography is fascinating, whether it be film or kind of handheld, or just like DSLR or whatever. You kind of learn a lot about how lenses work and the dynamic ranges and all that kind of stuff. Bear in mind they were working with not necessarily primitive equipment, but not the kind of stuff that you would know these days. And it's film.
Well, you can see a lot of it was shot with a 50 or an 85 lens. I mean, he's just close in with them.
Yeah. And it's film as well. I mean, that was always the challenging thing, really, is because recording stuff with film is a one-shot deal. There's no going back and redoing it, and if you can't afford the extra stuff.
I would imagine they rehearsed all this, especially this that's happening now. And the actions and the fight scenes. I would imagine they had to rehearse it and go through it more than a couple of times.
Yeah,
so they weren't wasting the film stock.
And you've got to be sure that you've got the shot, because you go, okay, I think we got it. You get down in the lab and you get it processed.
This soundtrack, sorry, Glenn, don't mean to interrupt, but I love the soundtrack here, where Romero's taken some of the old soundtracks and slowed them down. So you've got that boom, 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 boom. Man, that scared me the first time I saw it, the sound.
And this whole scene is like,
It's creepy, man. Really creepy.
I wouldn't say it was necessarily groundbreaking in terms of the kind of gore, because obviously Herschel Gordon Lewis was doing stuff like this, a decade before. But it's a lot more mean-spirited in some respects. It's a lot more kind of like horrific than anything.
Society eating itself.
Yeah.
It's really. I mean, they do mean a lot. It is a metaphor. I know that we'll talk about Romero sometimes laying on the metaphors and that a little bit too heavily, but he always says it's there. He says, I never pretend it's not there. The metaphors are there. You know. He said, I do that, and I do put it in my filmmaking. They're not underneath the surface. They're there. What I want to be in the films. And he always puts that shot in of society eating itself. He does. It's there in Day at the end with the track along the fence when they're eating Steele's watch and stuff. It's there in Dawn when the zombies take over the mall. At the end when they leave. And he ends with the credits, and it's there here. It's just it's really cool. But it's distinctly Romero, I think.
You're as useless as Barbara, woman. What do you mean you don't know the local geography? What's wrong with you?
What's Plan B?
Basement.
We haven't. Have you got a car? Got turned over. No, Johnny's got the keys. What?
So we've got to hang around for 24 hours for the zombies to crap it out. Then we've got to work out which zombie crap pile it is. And
I love how gutted Cooper is here. He's got that flipping scar on his the blood on his cheek because Ben cracked him. He's just sitting there feeling really sorry for himself because he didn't win. Fight. But secretly, he was right.
Yes. He's still a bastard. That's the thing, sometimes in these films, sometimes the bastards are right.
Tom and Judy would still be alive now if they hadn't tried that. They'd just gone down in the basement and chilled out.
And now they're barbecue.
Exactly. It was funny when I said I was going to go for beer for the barbecue, and Carrie said I forgot the cheese.
It's always radiation.
But I guess it was the time, and he did see he had to give some explanation, because that's what audiences would have wanted. Obviously, by the time it got to 78 and stuff.
Yeah, I mean, it's not.
Didn't have to explain it so much.
It's not a deal breaker by any means. When something happens, a natural disaster or a nuclear accident or anything, people are looking for explanations, and you get this kind of reporting in the news. So it's not like.
I mean that's generally what it is, isn't it? I mean, in Return, it's the toxin, right?
Yep.
The what's it called? The toxin B10 or something.
Trioxin.
I never remember what it is. Trioxin.
Yeah. I can't remember the exact one. If Josh was here, he'd tell us.
So a lot of the time, it's man-made, the virus.
Yeah.
Or the infection, whatever it is, like it is in 28 Days Later. Or there was. Can you remember the British ones? There was like Zombie Diaries and stuff that. It was after he did Diary of the Dead. There was all those British diaries, Zombie Diaries 1 and 2, I think there were. There was the American one, the Zombie Automation Transfusion. I went through a whole phase of just picking up zombie movies in the supermarkets. After 2004, when they did the Dawn remake, there was a whole resurgence.
Is this movies with zombies in the supermarket, or you bought the movie in the supermarket?
I bought the movie in the supermarket.
Did you go in as a zombie though to buy that?
It was probably about 2 o'clock in the morning, to be fair. I did used to frequent the 24-hour supermarkets a lot, buying beer and DVDs when I was a teenager.
Is that why they don't do it anymore?
This is ad-lib too, I mean, beat them or burn them. They're dead. They're all messed up.
Because
Totally
this
made
is
up.
Chili Billy Cardilli.
Yeah, that's Sarah's dad, right? That's
Yeah.
no, Sarah's dad from Day of the Dead. He's
Yep.
in the remake too. He pops up in 90 at some point.
Mm-hmm.
They're all messed up. That's one of my favorite lines in the movie. Yeah, they're dead. They're all messed up.
Yeah.
Totally made up as well. Romero didn't write that.
No.
That was just some local guy in the movie.
I think he always gave his actors a lot of room to kind of play, didn't he? So I'm sure half of the stuff that Joe Pilato says in Day of the Dead is made up by him.
Well, we've got to do a Day of the Dead watch along, man. It was.
Oh,
But then
yeah.
again, that'll probably just be me and you speaking the film. For like seeing the lines of the movie before they happen for now.
Well, you know, potentially a Day and Land.
Well, I'd love to do Land. You know, Land's just getting a 4K from Scream Factory.
Oh, cool.
I can't afford it, but I think it's about $40 or something. But I'm a big. I did eventually talk myself around to liking Land.
Actually, I've never hated it. It just I couldn't put it in George's upper echelon.
I don't know. For me, I'm such a fan that I find it hard not to like his movies.
Mm-hmm.
I always find something I like in them. You know, I mean, I know that you got the Blu-ray of Bruiser at the same time I did, right? The
Yep.
Indicator one.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember getting that and thinking, you know, I've been looking forward to a decent release of Bruiser because all I'd had before then was a really bad pan and scan transfer of the British release on
Yeah.
DVD, and there was a really bad German release of it too on DVD, and it'd always been bad quality. But it was really good to watch that again, and I really enjoyed it. I did.
Yeah. Bruce was a pretty good film.
It is. I mean, it was. I think it got made off the back of American Psycho, pretty obviously.
I think it's probably one of George's more self-conscious movies, is
Yeah.
what I would say about it. It does feel like he's much more conscious of making a statement than he was in his earlier films.
And he's a lot more bitter, I find, later on.
Mm.
I mean, I love the guy. I
Yeah.
really do. And I'm so... Pardon me. I wish I could have met him, but I never did. You know, just to shake his hand, because I really do love him that much.
Oh, yeah.
His films mean the world to me. They really do. But he got bitter later on, and you can see it in the films. Bruise is a pretty bitter film about... I mean, if you swap out the magazine for a TV studio or a film studio,
Mm-hmm.
it's him having a go at the businessmen who make films.
Yeah.
You know? And it's, I think he was bitter, and you can see it in his last couple of films.
See, just looking at this is like, you know, Ben shoots Harry, and it's really cold-blooded, actually.
I know, it is. It's a
I mean, they had a
great
little
scene
bit of a
as well.
scuffle, but he takes his time and goes, "Oh, yeah, I'm going to shoot you, motherfucker."
And it all happens in this beautiful light, because the lights have gone out.
Mm-hmm.
You get that, look at that beautiful shadow, what you were talking about before, the light and the contrast.
Yeah.
I mean, does he deserve to be shot? He's not a nice guy, but does he deserve to be shot?
I mean, he kind of pulled the gun on Ben.
He did, and he didn't open the door, so Ben
yeah.
would have died outside.
Yeah.
But I mean, look at this. This is just pure terror. That's the one, Captain. Bruce is the one about the guy that puts him up. Well, Captain, what does Bruce have to do with the American Psycho? Was the corporate side that was at the corporate psychos? That's what I always kind of saw about it. The guys in the suits, the Jason Fleming character and his friend, they were kind of yuppies, in the same way that Bret Easton Ellis's character in American Psycho was a yuppie. I mean, you might not say it the same, but that's where I saw the connection to American Psycho. Oh, this is so sad as well, man. He just wanted to save his daughter. And he did. Like I was saying before, he's been fighting to save her.
Yeah.
He doesn't know she's going to turn into a zombie. Spoiler alert.
Oh, no.
Here it comes.
Bad Karen. You're grounded, Karen. See, this is one of the more...
Look, Barbara finally tries as well.
Mm.
You know, when this happens, she finally gets up and tries to stop them getting in. Oh, look at that, though. That's an amazing shot of the family unit eating itself.
The sound of the screaming of the mother, though. She's getting that trowel kind of shoved in.
That's something else that's missing from the remake.
Mm.
Romero was doing the best he could
Mm-hmm.
and trying to make it the scariest he could. And that sound stayed with me for a long time after the first time I saw this movie.
More
I mean,
like
that's
chocolate syrup.
more chocolate syrup. But that's a nightmare. That's not reality anymore. That's a nightmare. Do you know what I'm saying? I love that about it. I love it.
Yeah, I mean, you're quite right with Barbara. She sort of finally snaps out of it. It's like, you know, she's fighting for their lives as much as anybody else. And there he is.
Yep, the hand coming around the door. That's him. Man, and we don't see it, but she's getting eaten alive right now.
It's not said an awful lot, but a lot of these people die to their loved ones.
Yep.
You've got the young couple, and it's because she was, you know, misguided enough to go running out with them, and it got them killed. And you got Barbara being taken by Johnny, and yeah, and the child killing the mother.
It's the same in the Crazies. It's the same in Martin. It's Martin's uncle that kills him. It's a theme that runs through a lot of his films, the earlier films. And he did have somebody to say. I'm not too sure about. I know a little bit about his history. You know, being born in the Bronx, Spanish family, right?
Mm-hmm.
And he ended up moving to Pittsburgh to go to Carnegie Mellon. Graduated Carnegie Mellon from art college.
Mm-hmm.
Started Latent Image. Started doing advertisements. And then said, "Let's make a movie." But I don't know much about his family life. He never said anything about it, as far as I know in interviews or anything. In fact, he said he used to pretend to be Italian in the Bronx because people would leave him alone more. Because they thought he was Italian with a name like Romero, but obviously Spanish. But
I guess the basement isn't such a bad place after all, is it, Ben?
He was right. I know I've said it about 10 times.
I do want him. Goes downstairs and Harry's last words are, "Told you."
just looks up and goes. Man, that's it. They've taken over. The zombies have taken over.
It's going back to the lighting again, but you see the kind of texture on the walls and all that sort of stuff, and it just makes the place come alive. You know, it gives the whole kind of visuals, just that feeling of reality. That it's not a set; it's a real place.
Oh, yeah.
It's rough and it's natural.
I think it's two different locations, right? I think the basement was. Was the basement of Latent Image, the building?
I think you might be right on that one.
And the house was the farmhouse they rented, I think, if I remember him. It's years since I've watched the commentary on this, but I'm pretty sure it was. I think it was the basement of Latent Image. It was used again in Dawn at some point.
Yeah.
I'm not sure. Kerry just said, is it Yogi Romero? If it's Spanish, I'm not sure.
Jorge Romero.
Jorge Romero, right. Well, that's been one messed up night. These guys have spent together.
He just sat down there going, "Well, what do you know? He was right."
I'd love to think that's what's going through his head. I would love to think he's saying, "Man, that bugger was right." Again, listen to that sound of the slowed down music that he's done.
Mm-hmm.
And you can tell it's slowed down because it's the longer, weird notes. Every day is a school day.
That's an
love
old-fashioned
that
helicopter.
shot of the tree. Man, they got all this for free too. all he did was say to the local news station, "Can we use the chopper?" Ran the coppers and said, "Can we use the police dogs and stuff?" And they were like, "Yeah, fine." They just came out and did it for him. I mean, that's incredible.
Yeah.
And I mean, he does thank them. I didn't see that in the opening credits. But Romero does thank the city of Pittsburgh. And he thanks the Pittsburgh police, the fire department. He thanks them all.
The Pittsburgh film scene, though, is just fascinating.
Oh, I mean, well, it's all the same guys in the remake. It's all the guys who made Midnight and stuff. And, it's all them.
Yeah, but, I mean, they made so many films. And, there's this just interrelated, this very entwined community of filmmakers and people who were just willing to rock up and do stuff. And George Romero in particular, he had that kind of family of people that he would rely on to help him make movies.
I mean, I guess it's just that thing about asking as well. I mean, half of the zombies in this, it's a guy with the same who gets shot and falls over in the field. He was like an investor who'd invested in some of his advertisements. A lot of them were business women and businessmen that they'd worked with at Latent Image, and they just came along and did it for free. It was like, Savini said, I was listening to him talk about the remake that we'll get into, I guess, in a minute, but he was talking about that people were willing to do it for nothing. They will come along and do it for $1. They just wanted to be in a George Romero zombie movie. If you grew up in Pittsburgh, it became something that people wanted to do.
Yeah.
I mean, how cool,
So we've got this build up now. You've got basically this is revisited in Dawn of the Dead. This whole kind of posse going out and taking out the rest of the zombies and all that kind of stuff. It's a bit of a hillbilly kind of thing going on. And in this one in particular, a lot of people have sort of read into the film a whole civil rights kind of thing, which it's sort of fair enough, but I've never really bought it. Particularly kind of like with this particular scene, because as we're about to see, with Ben emerging from the basement.
No, I agree. I don't think it's I don't think it's anything to do with civil rights. I think it was that he could get the police and the police dogs for free.
Yes.
So they came along and he shot them. It just so happened that the accident of history, this film being made in 1968.
Yeah.
It was the accident of history. It was.
Yeah.
I mean, he said that him and Strana threw the film in the trunk of the car. They were driving to New York to try and sell it. Heard in the radio Martin Luther King had been shot.
Yeah.
And he went, that's crazy.
There's something about George Romero. I think a lot of the things that are read into it, including with the Dawn and Day and whatever, a lot of the stuff that's read into it tends to be kind of a product as much of this sort of very rich world that George Romero builds. I think there's an unconscious kind of element to it. I think he feeds in on the vibes of what's going around.
Definitely, yes.
More than anything, rather than being explicit about it.
Yep.
It's like this scene. Ben here gets shot, and people took that as being a particular kind of message. But these guys couldn't really see who he was. All they saw was a figure in the window.
Yep.
Black, white, didn't matter.
Yep. And that guy there is Vince Stravinsky, the guy I was talking about who did all the squibs, built the bridge so that it get across. He's in Martin too, playing the train conductor.
Yeah.
He's kind of a legendary figure in Romero's films. He was always somewhere in the background. Mm-hmm. So the guy who shoots Ben is Vince Stravinsky. I always remember that name.
These stills, it's a hell of a disturbing image to be left on with the movie. And again, people kind of likened it to being sort of a lynching kind of thing.
Yeah.
And again, I can see why. And you could say there was potentially a little bit of that, but I've always felt it was more, that these weren't being treated as human. You could, understandably relate it to the race, but there's a big pile of everybody, on that fire by the end of it.
Hey man, when we're dead, we're all the same.
Yeah, it's just
what I
meat.
mean? It's I love that about that. I do, and I never got that. I never got the lynching thing from it either. I never did. I've read that myself too.
I can understand it probably more from an American audience point of view.
And like what you touched on earlier on with the newsreel footage, when you said earlier on, some people say it looks like newsreel footage because it's shot handheld and it's that kinetic energy to it. And it's like, well, he was doing the same thing as the newsreel footage people were doing. He was shooting the same. He was shooting guerrilla style. literally Guerrilla Style on how much did this end up being? Was it 300,000? I think
I don't know.
spent on this. I think it was something like that. It was around that figure from what I remember. After the advertising and everything was done, a few of them kicked in $600 each to get it started. They had like 6,000, and then once they showed people it was in sync, they got more investors, and I think it ended up being around 325, if I remember rightly. I'm not sure, but I think it is. But man, it's cool if you watch the still images there, starting to see the zombies that we knew.
Yeah.
And then when we get to Dawn, you actually get featured zombies.
Has to be said that was hard, I think, to appreciate on the old VHS was quite who they were.
Oh yeah, I agree.
But yeah.
Well, that was fantastic. I've really enjoyed watching that again.
That was something, wasn't it?
Right. It's just a perfect. It's a perfect movie. I really think it is. And almost by accident. But like I say, I think I've talked myself around to thinking he did some of that on purpose as well. While we're listening.
The captain said, what specifically is Lynchian about Night? I never got that from it. It's more the kind of, for me, obviously it wasn't influenced by Lynch because Lynch wasn't making films till about 10, 12 years later. But the lighting, the kind of theatrical style of lighting is why I would kind of match those up in that sort of respect, because that's one of the things with like Eraserhead. There's very shaped light, a very huge amount of contrast between dark and light, and all those kind of things going on. So it does sort of the two have a similar kind of vibe in that respect for me. But I think right now we'll take a quick couple of minutes break, and then we will come straight back. I'm just getting the next
movie set up now as we speak.
Yeah. So you can do that while we I'm going to put us on pause, and we will be back in about 2 minutes. So talk amongst yourselves. We'll see you again in just a few minutes.
All right, cool. I'll see you back. Thanks.
Yeah, welcome back. Hope everybody's managed to get themselves all nice and refreshed and everything. So we are going to get started with the next movie in just a couple of moments. So if start giving yourselves, giving us the thumbs up and all that kind of stuff to let us know that you're ready. And we will get on with the next Night of the Living Dead movie.
Night of the Living Dead, 1990.
I know. It's a zombie fest tonight.
This is a great double bill for me. It's I mean, this is a weird one. This, to me, actually went under the radar a little bit. Mm-hmm. I didn't see this till about 98, which was it was actually at a friend's. We'd been out clubbing and we came back, and he put it on, and I was like, there was a remake of Night of the Living Dead. And that's how I saw this the first time. I couldn't, because it really flopped when it came out. Like it cost them about 4 million, I think, 4 and change. Mm. Only made 5 million, so they were like, that's it, you know. And then it was like the VHS that I saw. I didn't even know this was a thing. Mm. I couldn't believe it.
I do remember seeing a bunch of stuff about it in magazines and stuff, because it was quite anticipated by the horror crowd. So things like Fangoria and stuff had articles going around on it. But I didn't get, obviously, because I don't think it had a theatrical release over here, if I remember.
No, it didn't.
No, so we had to wait for it to come on VHS.
It really didn't do well, which I'm really surprised about. When looking at the production values, it actually looks pretty good. Mm. But yeah, it did not do very well. I mean, it kind of totally distilled Savini's career. Mm-hmm. I mean, as a director, he did Tales from the Dark Side, a couple episodes, mm-hmm. Night of the Living Dead, and I think since then he's done some shorts and then the new Creepshow series. Mm-hmm. But,
he's acted in a few very, very, very bad straight-to-video movies, hasn't he?
What, did you see Children of the Living Dead?
Oh, that was bad.
You know what it is? I am a big Living Dead fan, so I've watched Children of the Living Dead a couple of times. But it's really bad, the dubbing, when he's got the shotgun and he's like almost like a Steven Seagal type guy at the beginning, doing all the judo stuff on the zombies.
Did you show that book?
Oh, the book for Living Dead 90?
Yeah.
Yeah, well, this came out a while ago, but I bought a reprint of it. I just thought if anybody's interested in Night of the Living Dead, it'd be good to show. So it's Night of the Living Dead, 1990, the version you've never seen, and this is written by Savini. I got this for about 12 quid on Amazon in 2019. It's a reprint, but so this version is that we're about to watch is very toned down. But Savini actually did a whole book of his storyboards, so you can see the version that he actually intended for the film. Mm-hmm. If you want to see it in storyboards in this book, and I highly recommend it if you're a fan of Night of the Living Dead 90 as we are. It's well worth a buy. I think it's a bit more expensive now, maybe it's 20 quid, but it's worth it if you're a fan of this movie. You get to see all the gore he planned. I mean, some of it was even like Argento-ish, you know, the way that he planned on directing the film. He had slow motion bullet hits and stuff planned, but obviously none of that worked out. It's a very, very good book, and I recommend it if you're a fan of Savini, Romero, or Night of the Living Dead.
Yeah. Okay, folks, we are going to get started. I haven't seen any thumbs up, but we're going to have to get started anyway, because otherwise this is going to go on forever and a day. This is an hour and a half left of this. So, Night of the Living Dead, 1990, second link in there, and we're going to get started on the count of 3 and go on go. So 3, 2, 1, go.
Columbia Pictures, man.
See, this is a weird thing for me when I watch this movie.
Columbia Pictures bought it.
Yeah, this is a weird thing for me when I watch this movie. It's just because of having a bigger studio attached to it in any way, shape, or form. Just feels a little bit weird.
Oh, good night, Kerry. Kerry's going to hit the road. Take care. Thanks for joining us.
George A. Romero present.
Yeah, and Menem Golem as well. This should have been great. It really should have been. And it is, in its own way, good. Mm-hmm. But it's not great. But we'll get into that, I guess.
Yeah.
Right. But yes, as far as I know, Savini did draw his own storyboards, Captain. He's not the best sketch artist in the world. But like I say, you can see them in the book. They're kind of cartoonish almost. If you can see that on the camera, that's the kind of thing you get. So yeah, this is already the film begins very much like Night of the Living Dead, right?
It's a bit of a different vibe to it, though, doesn't it? Because it does feel a little bit more played up.
Yes.
I mean, with the original, obviously, as we've seen, you know, and he's teasing it, that sort of builds up over quite a few lines.
Bill Moseley.
They're coming to get you, Barbara.
Bill Moseley delivers it really well, doesn't he? So this is, I think, well, like I say, Bill Moseley, Patricia Tallman, they'd worked together on Armies of Darkness, and they also worked together on Dead Air. So there's a relationship there after this. So they obviously enjoyed working together because they did it a couple of times.
Either that or they just didn't have a choice.
Barbara Anderson, the costume designer, that's Cletus Anderson, the editor's wife, right?
Yeah.
Sorry, not the production designer's wife. Sorry, Cletus was the production designer. But John Bullock and Everett Burrell, who did brilliant special effects on this, and they were Savini's kind of, what do you call them, team on Day of the Dead. And of course they went on a massive success. McCulloch, who does the soundtrack of this movie, was the guy that did the sound on Midnight with John Russo. So it's very Tom Dubinsky, who edited this, is the assistant director, editor of Martin, who also was the camera assistant on Dawn of the Dead. So it's very Cletus Anderson, production designer. There he is. So this is very much a Pittsburgh deal.
Yeah,
it's very much
again. The family reunites in yet another iteration.
It is. It's very much a family deal again, and it should have been great.
I can only imagine there would have been a lot of interference, not least because one of the things that was mentioned at the time even was George Romero and Tom Savini had something of a falling out because of the just because George wanted to see one thing and Tom Savini was trying to do his thing.
It was. I mean, I do love this film. I do. I mean, obviously nowhere near as much as the original. But Bill Moseley, to begin, and Patricia Tallman, the great cast. The cast in this film is great. There's nothing wrong with the acting. There's nothing wrong with it technically. But there's just something that isn't there. There's something that's missing throughout the whole movie. And I think it might have been the gore that Tom Savini intended. Tom Savini wanted this to be a much more gore-filled extravaganza. He did. And Romero wrote this. And Romero had said, I mean, this was a chance for them to make money, right? I mean, as was the colorized version we mentioned earlier, the one I've got the poster of there behind us, the Hal Roach one, that was to try and make money on the original because nobody made any money from the original Night of the Living Dead. No. Because of the copyright issues.
Yeah, they screwed up.
So Romero didn't want to do a remake, but Russo, from what I read, so I mean, if anybody ever watches this who knows better, tell us, but from what I read, Russo and Striner wanted to make some money. They said, look, George, we're going to do this with or without you. And George said, okay, I'll write the script, but I want Tom Savini to direct it. Because George Romero had stuck up for Savini on Tales from the Dark Side, which was produced by George's company and Richard B. Rubenstein's company. John Harrison also directed a lot of those episodes, as did Gornick, who did the photography on Dawn of the Dead, Martin, Day of the Dead, and also directed Creepshow 2. So it's very much a family thing. And Romero wanted this to be... I know it's great, that isn't it?
Sorry, just obvious puppet is obvious.
There was, Brian, Night of the Living Dead 3D with Sid Hagen. It was also Wishmaster, right? The guy who played Wishmaster was in that too. The guy from 48 Hours, another 48 Hours. He's a brilliant actor. He was in Lost with a patch on his eye. I should know his name. But I did buy that. I've got a lot of them. Before we carry on, actually, as well, I had loads of stuff to recommend.
See, this is a very good shot when you see she's just got away from the carnage and...
with the fake leg?
You think she's got away and the zombie just appears in between the graves in the distance. This is very Tom Savini.
It is indeed. I
Because
agree.
he had a real eye for doing realism, basically. And the premise behind this, the reason why the suit splits at the back is because that's how morticians would fit a suit
Of course. Right.
onto a corpse in state, basically. So that's very Tom Savini, all that kind of stuff. It's not necessarily a gratuitous thing. It's because he would always try to find references to real life when he does all his effects. But one of the things I would say about this whole scene is it kicks off a fuck ton faster than the original does.
It does, and it is exciting.
Yeah.
And it uses our love of the original, like the old guy coming up in the background.
Yeah.
And then Greg Funk, who plays that zombie, he comes up, bumps in. So we're expecting something, and he does the well, Savini's thing. It's the magic trick. He loves the magic, Savini, right? He loves his books are called Grand Illusions that he writes about his effects.
Yeah, I've got both of those.
They're great, aren't they? I've got two of them. I've got 2 volumes.
Yeah.
But
1 and 2.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
But he believes in the magic of it, and that's one of the things that's magic about his films.
Mm-hmm.
I really dig that about this movie. I know I sound down on it, but it is a good movie. It just could have been something else.
Yeah, and it's always going to struggle to be better than the original simply because the original is
iconic.
The things that the original film did are things that are very hard to top because we've been there. It's like riding a roller coaster. The first time you ride it, you don't know what to expect, and then the second time you ride it, you're very much more familiar with how things work, and what
apparently it did get respect.
Mm-hmm.
I was seeing it in preparation for this the other day. I watched Savini's commentary.
Yeah.
And he said that when he got Innocent Blood doing the effects on the John Landis movie, John Landis said, hey, by the way, great girl in the Night of the Living Dead remake.
Yeah.
He said she was great. That's from John Landis.
Yeah.
So high praise from other people in the industry too. So people did see it, but not enough, I guess.
Yeah, like you say, it's not a bad movie. It's
not by any means. Not by any means.
But it is. I guess you could compare it to like the space program. Everybody was tuned in for the first flight.
Yep.
But when it came to the 45th or whatever, people became less interested because they were very familiar with it, all that kind of stuff. And he brought a lot of stuff to it. And one of the things which is very notable about this movie is it modernizes a lot of stuff and it corrects a certain amount of things. Like with, I say corrects, it changes things with like Barbara. The character is not as catatonic as the original. And stuff
not at all. I mean, he mentions, like I mentioned earlier on about the powerful characters like Ripley in Alien. She's almost like a Ripley in Alien. She starts off kind of not running away, but she assesses the situation, says, right, I'm going to put my pants on, I'm going to do this, and she starts to get stronger and realizes I need to fight to get out of this situation. And I like that. I do. I like that about Barbara in this version. But Patricia Tallman, Knight Riders, right? She's in Knight Riders.
Yes.
She's the girl on the back of the motorbike who goes out with one of the guys.
Yeah.
I remember her from Babylon 5. I don't mean to nerd out, but she was in like Babylon 5 from season 3 onwards as a pretty cool character, recurring character. She was Jurassic Park stunt double for Laura Dern.
I was going to say she does one of her main kind of incomes was as stunt work.
Well, you wouldn't recognize her in Armies of Darkness. She's a Deadite. She's got all the stuff on, and she's a witch in that as well. She's a really cool actress.
For those who hadn't spotted her in Army of Darkness, she is the hag, basically when they're in the hall, and the one that has the pot of hot water or whatever drops it. That's Patricia Tallman.
But watch this. I mean, this is something we haven't seen before. The hand coming over the stairs. He was really trying to make it exciting. He was. And
it's just a little bit weird, isn't it?
It is. The hand wouldn't be moving. Apparently, this guy, Uncle Reach, when I was in the commentary, he's a policeman from Pittsburgh.
Yeah. And he does look like one of the guys from Midnight, doesn't he?
He does, right?
We just need the soundtrack coming back, don't we?
But Savini cast lots of his friends in this, too.
Yeah. As they would, because I mean, he approached it very much like a Pittsburgh movie. You know, he's got all his friends and all those all that lot around, and George is around, and regardless of the relationship during the movie. But Patricia Tallman's a good actress.
She's good. She is. She's very good. But like I say, I saw this late 90s. I knew her from Babylon 5 before this, so I was like, oh, that's the chick from Babylon. Sorry, not the chick. That's the girl from Babylon 5. And it was, you know what? So I was like, oh man. But I mean, this totally flew under my radar, and I'm, usually I pride myself on being a zombie guy. But it was like, I couldn't believe this had flown under my radar, and it was actually a friend who introduced us to it.
I think I caught it as fast as I could, which was when it got released on VHS.
Totally, Iris has just said there, the foreshadowing of the hook, when he steps out of the car and the hook comes down, and that's how he's introduced. I thought that when I saw this, because I'd seen Candyman before it too. That's cool, man. I'd know exactly what you mean there, Iris. I'd seen that too. I did see the, Brian was saying, Night of the Living Bread. I've got the Millennium edition of Night of the Living Dead DVD, and you get it as a special feature, Night of the Living Bread. So it's slices of bread in stop motion going after the people. They're just throwing the bread. It's really funny. I really enjoyed it. And yes, Adam, I did pick up Blood on Satan's Claw. I didn't get Witchfinder General, but I got the 4K, I think it was, of Blood on Satan's Claw. It was really good. It was a good call.
See, Tony Todd's character in this feels almost as hysterical as Barbara.
Well, that's the thing, man. I mean, Tony Todd, he's a really good actor. But sometimes in this, he goes a little bit too far.
It's a bit of a trait of his. He does have that kind of like very sort of
Brad Dourif, tears in the eyes kind of thing. And,
yeah. I mean, it works a lot of the time. Sometimes not so much, but he is such an intense presence in any film that it kind of makes up for moments like that by quite a wide margin. So
sprang. Iris just said sprang with a frying pan.
Yes.
I never get why he throws the frying pan away either. I would have kept it. He whacks him and then throws it away. And it's keep it, man, keep him.
Perfectly good non-stick skillet. It's perfect for
Keep
zombies.
a hold of that, man. You might want to have some bacon later on. But look at this. I mean, this is so good. It is so good. I mean, look at that effect of the retractable, harkening back to the original, because you've got the tire iron, and we never see it when he's hitting the guys on the floor. But here, that was, what do you call him? Ben in the original. But Ben here, you see the impact, you get it. And apparently Savini wanted a lot more of that. A lot more of the impact, a lot more of the blood, but the MPAA cut this film to pieces. And you can see that as we'll get into the kills later on. You hardly ever see a headshot. It's like they really cut the film to pieces.
I mean, it's sort of gone are the days where, like with Dawn of the Dead and stuff, where they would go maybe the unrated and kind of path. The MPAA, as much as Americans will say you got freedom of speech, you don't have to go through the MPAA, there's no censorship, and it's just a bit of a fallacy, because you make a film that is unrated or even NC-17, and the chances are you just can't sell that movie in about 90% of the places. Basically it's just you become so marginal.
Yeah. And I think if this film had been what Savini intended with the gore and stuff, more people would have watched it.
And this is the thing.
We had more gore hounds, like ourselves. I know me and you like that film with gore. It's like there would have been more guys like us wanting to see it.
I mean, I don't think the film particularly suffers because of it necessarily. I mean, it would have been great to have it. Obviously, we've not seen it in the other iteration, which is a real shame. But I don't think it's necessarily a story that. I mean, you could say, well, it should have been more like Dawn of the Dead. Yeah, fine, fair enough. But this is Night of the Living Dead, and the original survived and flourished even despite the fact that it didn't have like masses and masses and masses of gore.
Yeah.
But it is a shame that we didn't get to see what Tom Savini's vision in its entirety was.
It is. It's a shame. It is. I mean, and he does now. He's a little bit older. I watched the interview with him from I think it was 2019. So there's been 3 releases of this, as far as I know, on Blu-ray. I think there's a 4K coming. There was so this has had a, in my opinion, a terrible history of Blu-ray. I don't know if I've mentioned this already, but I've had a lot of different versions of this. And Twilight Time released one, and it was so bad. They tried to make the whole film darker. So it was like a blue hinge, and it was really bad. It was a really bad color job.
Yeah.
So I got that, sold it. 2017, Sony did a release. Really bad color job too. And I think it was because this film's so bright, they tried to make it darker, and it just didn't it didn't work. But I did get, eventually, the Umbrella release. I brought this along just in case anyone's interested. From, I think it was 2018, 2019. And this was the best release of this movie I've seen. It's you get some great special features on here. Savini, people talking about the movie. Probably can't see there with a terrible autofocus on my camera. But this is the best edition of this I've bought. If anyone's interested in getting an edition of it for themselves. Because as much as I say I'm not a huge fan of it, I have watched it a lot. Because it's Savini, Romero, John Russo, Ian McCulloch. You know, it's part of that. It's part of the Pittsburgh thing. It is. And I kind of party with it. I always kind of have partied with it. It's one of those movies.
I always liked the zombie that was with the broken back. You know, the one he runs over on the way in, and it's just like, you know, it's kind of folded in half and going.
It's great. I mean, this comes from the storyboards of Tom Savini. He really thought about it. He thought about every kill. He thought about every little thing. He really had. And in that book, he details everything. And man, if they just let him do what he wanted. And I hate to think that it was Romero that got in his way, but maybe it was, you know? Romero wanted something that was more like the original. Savini wanted something that was more 90s, more modern. But it was his first film, man. He just wanted to get his name on his first directional feature.
Yeah.
So he was saying yes to the company, and yes to the guys, and yes to this, yes to the compromise. And I mean, looking back on it now, he says I should have fought for the Gore, but, you know, I just wanted to get that first film made so I could make some more.
Well, that's the thing. It's like with Day of the Dead, infamously, there's this whole kind of thing where basically George was offered 2 budgets. He could either have a very healthy amount of money and make trying to think of the rating with it would have been basically R-rated movie.
Would it have gotten an X or an R?
Probably an R-rated. We're like looking at an R-rated or basically an NC-17. So if you made it R-rated, it would be, you know, he'd have got the bigger budget. But if he made it NC-17 or unrated, then it would have been much, much lower, and he opted for the latter, basically.
Yes, he did. I know. It was something like it was $3 million he lost, wasn't it?
Yeah, I mean,
it was a lot of money.
The thing with it was there is an expanded script. It's much like this movie in that respect. It's an expanded.
I read it. I read Romero's original script for D. I managed to find a PDF online. And downloaded it.
It's on the Blu-ray or on the DVD.
Oh, it is on the.
It's on the DVD. Yeah.
The one with the Velcro cover was.
Yeah.
The Digimax. It was Digimax. Right?
Digimax. Yeah, that's correct. So basically, the original Day of the Dead was supposed to have this whole kind of thing with above ground village. It's a great script when it starts off when they're on the boat and stuff, and they're in the city, and it is a good script. So all that kind of stuff was in there, and George really wanted it and all this kind of stuff, but he was like, well, I can't really compromise the rest of it. And I always thought, I have read that script, and I always thought that it wouldn't have been as effective as what he did make, because what he did make was this horribly claustrophobic and.
Well, a lot of it crept into land.
Yeah.
A lot of that script crept into land.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know if you remember the script, but you had the camp above ground, where the military would push people out to, and there was a mad doctor there, Logan. But there was the guys underground who had all the sports things and stuff, and they were like rich people living underground. And at the end of that screenplay, there's a guy, the mechanic character, stitches loads of bombs under his skin so he can get past the military blockades, and then blows himself up, so he blows up the underground bunker.
Yeah.
And I remember reading that and thinking, this wouldn't have worked, George. I thought, I'm a huge Day of the Dead fan. I love that movie. As much as Night, I would say.
Yeah.
I mean, I kind of party, like I say, with Dawn and Day, but Night of the Living Dead, I put on and watch and chill and have a few beers like we've done.
It's like kind of like what I was saying earlier, George Romero has always, in my opinion, been best when he does that microcosm.
Definitely. I agree.
And that's the thing. When the budget was cut down, it forced him to sort of rethink and make everything much smaller, really. And it's true of so many art forms that having those limitations, having that box to try to squeeze everything into, often generates better ideas than you might have originally had. When it came to Land, you had a lot more scope to make a much bigger movie.
Well, it was his biggest budget. It was the biggest budget he'd had, Land. It was.
Plus, he had all the, the CGI and all that kind of stuff, which is available to him.
It was off the back of Schneider's film, the remake. It was, so because that was popular, they immediately went to the guy who did the original. Do you want to make another one? He said, yes, of course.
Yes.
Yeah.
But,
like I say, a lot of that Day script did creep into Land. It really did.
Yeah. I mean, but at the end of the day, Land, when it came down to it, was a much wider vista for the story. It was a much more open kind of
But it's got that amazing line from Dennis Hopper, man. Zombies, man. They creep me out. Every time I see that movie, I just go, yes!
I love Dennis Hopper, but I didn't like him in that movie. I thought, because he is one of those very exuberant performers, and it works a lot of the time. In that movie, it just felt a bit much. Yeah, it was a bit much.
Well, it was, I think George was saying it was like Easy Rider came out in 68, Night of the Living Dead came out in 68, and kind of like casting Jamie Lee Curtis in Halloween, he thought if we get together, the two guys from Easy Rider and Night of the Living Dead, but it did. Nobody got that. Nobody got that.
Yeah, I mean, you could sort of like say his character had that some of that Joe Pilato kind of thing going on.
Oh, I would think so.
But yeah. See, at this point in the original, Barbara would have been on the sofa.
Well, that's the thing, and now she's getting ready. She's cleaning the blood off. She gets her boots on. It's really cool. And I mean, he gets his Ben thing here, the Beekman's Diner thing.
Yeah.
Beekman's Diner in the original, but and Tony Todd does a hell of a job.
Yeah.
I mean, he's a great actor. He is. I mean, like I say, sometimes I think he overacts in this, but I mean, he's an actor. That's what they do, right? But he gets it. He gets the role.
It's kind of like, as actors go, it's kind of like Avery Brooks from DS9.
Yes.
I don't know Tony Todd's history, but I got the feeling he was.
That's my favourite Star Trek.
I got the feeling he was. Was he a stage actor?
I'm not sure about Tony Todd. I know he was working all the time because he's in everything.
Avery Brooks was.
Oh, Avery Brooks. Yes, he was. Avery Brooks was. Yes. Yeah. Avery Brooks was a Shakespearean guy.
Yeah. And that explains a lot, because there is a big difference in stage acting and screen acting in terms of how far you push the performance. It's a very different thing. If you're on stage, you're performing to somebody who could be 15, 20 meters away, and you have to kind of really push that performance out. And that on camera, that can really, really be, it's like Spinal Tap's turn it up to 11. So really, really great stage actors who transition or kind of like do film in general have to learn to kind of wind it back sometimes. I
think maybe that's what it is. I mean, I'm not sure with that. I mean, with Todd, maybe he was staged.
I kind of got the feeling he was.
I mean, I like it. I love him in Hatchet. He pops up in the first Hatchet film.
Yeah.
And man, he nails it. They're in New Orleans, and he pops up. He does this great performance. I mean, he's in, is it Hamburger Hill? He's in some really, really good movies. I mean, he's Candyman, for goodness sake. Yeah. He's really good, Yeah. But in this, it's just every now and again I think, just reel it in a little bit.
Just wind it back a tiny bit, yeah.
Yeah, just wind it back a tiny bit. It's like the goddamn you what we watched before. He just needs to wheel it in a little bit.
I mean, to be fair, that line is probably one of the worst lines in the film, just because it is the whole kind of no moment of the film.
My favourite no moment ever. Did you ever see is it Mary Lambert's Pet Sematary, the Stephen King adaptation? Getting back to Stephen King, when the kid gets killed, Cage, and the dad goes, "No, man." It's like I couldn't help but laugh.
It's like, don't ever do that. You know, if you ever make films, folks, don't ever do that.
It should be I mean, the guy's kids just died. It should be the most traumatizing moment of his life.
Sometimes trauma and anger it should be expressed quieter.
Like Dwayne Jones.
Yeah.
But, I mean, we're getting there already. We mentioned earlier on that this is lighter, but look how light these scenes are. Mm-hmm. They're very bright, even though they're in the darkness.
Yeah.
I mean, this house should have no lights on. Nobody's been up there. It's daytime, but this is the hallway of the house. It should be really dark. Mm-hmm. But this is even more so, I would say, theatrical lighting than the original. It's so bright.
And I suspect that's as much to do with Tom Savini wanting everything to be visible, because, you know, he's doing got all these special effects and all that kind of stuff going on.
From what I understand from the commentary, it was a choice. It was a stylistic choice.
Yeah,
he said he wanted to bring things out into the daytime.
Yeah, and that's fair enough. It is nicer than Living Dead, though.
I mean, eventually we do get there. We've got that lovely transition when we see the moon and stuff like from the credits, and it comes through in a sec.
There is still some really nice lighting in this movie.
Oh, it is. It's very
subtle.
Very, I don't know. I shouldn't say theatrical. I should say cinematic, I guess.
And that's a big thing, isn't it? I think with lighting and stuff like in this movie, it is much more cinematic than it is theatrical. George Romero's has that much more kind of theatrical flourish to how things are lit.
Ken Ribs just said Star Wars Darth Vader's no. That is a great no. No.
Well, that's what I was trying to do there. No.
I've been dying to. I've thought of making a video for the channel of just classic no's from movies. Because there's some really good ones and there's some really
someone's done one.
It will be a good video, right?
Yeah.
All the classic no's from movies.
You just end it with a very curt no.
Oh, look out, it's Henry's mate. Hi, it's Otis, Iris. Tom Towles. Flipping great in this. And apparently, he did get cast in this off the back of playing Otis in Henry Portrait of a Serial Killer. Mm-hmm. There's William Butler next to him, the guy from... He was Friday the 13th, right? He was in Friday the 13th, was it The New Beginning? And he also went on to write the sequels. Have we already said this? I'm not sure. But he wrote the sequels, Return of the Living Dead, Necropolis, and Rave to the Grave. He's directed something like 40 movies, that guy now, William Butler, who plays Tom. So he's became a horror guy in his own right.
Yeah.
But yeah, Tom Towles, man, Otis and Henry, you can't beat him. He's a great actor. I mean, I wish I'd seen him in more.
Yeah.
Before he died, he passed away a couple of years ago, unfortunately. But he was in like House of a Thousand Corpses for Zombie, playing the cop. He was in Michael Mann's Miami Vice movie, playing the skinhead. He was really good. He's a really good actor, man. And he is a perfect Cooper in this.
He kind of looks the part as well, doesn't he? So.
Well, Savini said he wanted to cast people that looked similar to the original cast. Lawrence Fishburne apparently came in to read for it. Eric DeSalle from ER.
Yeah.
Lots of guys came in to read for this. I was trying to think who read for Cooper. He did see a couple of names, but I can't remember. But he said as soon as he met Tom Towles, he said, "Yep, that's it, man. You're Cooper. You even look like him, you know."
Well, I mean, they both got those very chiseled, just astonishingly handsome kind of shaped face. You know, very, very defined faces.
So that's the only time race is ever mentioned. No offense, but you don't exactly look like neighbors yourself, Mr. Ben. That's the only time race is ever mentioned.
And it's almost offhand, isn't it? It's like, well, you know, you don't exactly look local yourself. You know what it is? It is a racist thing to say, but it's also like... By the end of the
stream, I'm going to think this is better than the original. I'm loving it so much now with all these one-liners. He is a more chilled out Ben, to be fair.
Mm.
Ben would have been shouting at Cooper by now. Do it.
He loves my basement.
Well, again, who's right? Team Cooper over here. He was right all the time. I'd have been like, all right, Mr. Cooper, I'm coming down with you. It is. I mean, it is. I mean, the performances are good. I don't think they're as good as the original, but they are good.
Mm.
But they're more almost pantomime. They're more over the top in this.
Yeah.
They are.
Definitely. I mean, the whole film it's like even that opening sequence, everything that happens is compressed so much more tightly than it is in the original.
Yes.
It doesn't breathe as much. There's very little chance for you to sort of rest in this movie.
Well, apparently that's one of the things where Romero did the script and Savini came into conflict.
Mm-hmm.
So Romero was saying, "Oh man, you've got to leave room for this dialogue scene here. How are you going to film all this dialogue?" And Savini was saying, "I'm making an action movie here, dude. This is an action movie. You know, this is a horror movie. People don't want people to talk. It's an action movie." And I think that's where they came into conflict a bit from Savini's interviews.
Yeah, that would make a lot of sense.
I mean, I don't mean to speak ill of the dead with Romero, but because he can't defend himself. But that's kind of what Savini said about it.
And I mean, I'm not in disagreement with Romero on that. Because his movies have always had that sort of space for a bit of the character development and bit of dialogue, a little bit of a lot of slower moments. In fact, I mean, you look at Dawn of the Dead, it is 20% action, 80% talking.
When you look at Martin wandering around the town and he's feeling like this lonely character in this isolated landscape. And, I mean, he was good at that.
But it's equally,
so
legitimate.
was Gore, to be fair, the cinematographer.
Yeah, I mean, it's equally legitimate that Savini kind of wanted to make a different kind of film.
Yes.
So, you sort of go, it neither party was necessarily right nor wrong. It's just they were coming at this stuff from different angles. George from his own approach of filmmaking and Tom from his. Because Tom's history of filmmaking is really about action scenes.
Totally. I mean, by the end of his career, I mean, he was directing his own effects. I mean, you watch something like Friday the 13th with him and Tassos Travakis. I mean, that was them too. The beheading at the end of Friday the 13th wouldn't look as glorious and perfect as it does if it wasn't for Tasso and him directing their own scenes.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I think Savini would have... I mean, he is a great director. I really enjoyed that episode of Creepshow that he did that was about the Loch Ness Monster kind of thing. I don't know if you saw it. I think it was in season 2. I really enjoyed that. And I love his Tales from the Dark Side episodes. I mean,
I think that, when you compare these things back to back like this, it is fascinating because, I mean, it is almost exactly the same story. Just the priorities have changed between the two different directors. And that's actually kind of fascinating to see how decisions kind of change the feel of the film, because you don't see anyone looking at a film this film compared to the other one in terms of political subtext as much. When you look at the 1968 Night of the Living Dead, people really do sort of get a feel for the time when it was made, and this not so much. Well, barely at all, really.
No, I agree. I totally agree. This is a little bit more timeless. I think because of the way that I mean, for example, Tom Towell's clothes, Cooper's clothes. You can tell who he is. You can tell he's a upper class guy from the way that he wears his clothes. Whereas Ben was much more working class in the original, or Harry was much more working class. In the original.
Yeah.
Even with Judy, they're a lot more like high school kids in this one than they were in the original. just by costume design and where they are. Do you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
So this isn't as relatable in terms of that, but it's the same as film noir.
Yeah.
People responded to film noir so much in the 40s and 50s because there were low budget films, they were shot on the streets on location, people wearing their own suits, their own clothes, their own hats,
Mm-hmm.
you know, and that's kind of what Night of the Living Dead 68's like.
Mm-hmm. It's
almost like a little time capsule, whereas this one is much more of a theatrical production, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah.
I think that's where I was coming to with all that blah 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 in there. but I think that's where I was getting to.
Well, you're on the Rambleholic channel, so it's all grand.
You see, all this feels. I don't like all this, but between the Cooper family,
Mm-hmm.
I do like Tom Towles, but it feels really over the top too much. Whereas Cooper in the original, Carl Hardman,
Mm-hmm.
a lot more relatable, right?
Well, the whole feel of the film is much more cinematic, like we say.
Yep.
So the presentation, the acting, the
A lot more polished.
framing, just how it looks in general. You know, it's a much more polished, like you say, production.
Well, I mean, you've talked about this before, man, and I remember you comparing it to the Gus Van Sant Psycho.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas that was a kind of a shot-for-shot remake of Hitchcock's 1960 film, was it?
Yes, 19. Yeah.
And I remember you saying it was similar in the vibe that it was almost shot-for-shot, but there's something just not there.
No, I mean, because the thing is, there's while there's a certain amount of emulation in the movie of the original, you know, they're trying to capture a lot of the feel and the look of the original. Certainly, like with the actors, trying to find actors who kind of look similar to the original actors and all that kind of stuff. There's a lot of stuff which is just kind of changed. The way Barbara is presented, which is a much more kind of modern take of a woman.
Action hero? I mean, she is pretty much an action hero by the
Yeah.
end of it.
So you've got all that kind of stuff going on, and then there's the more cinematic sensibilities as opposed to this sort of cinema verite kind of approach that Romero took with the original. It's much more recognisable as a cinematic work than the original was in so many respects. So
Definitely.
yeah, the vibe
Well, I mean,
is very different.
So much so that, you know, we got the Columbia logo at the beginning because Columbia bought it thinking we could release this in theaters, widespread. People will get it, but they didn't. They just didn't get it.
No.
So I mean, with 68, that kinetic, handheld, verite style works for the material much more, do you think, than this cinematic style does?
I think so for the story,
Right.
but because I mean the story is even in the original is a very very small story.
Oh, totally.
So there's not a whole heck of a lot going on, but with the original, George kind of like threw in a whole bunch of stuff. Well, accidentally or deliberately, the movie sort of captured the zeitgeist, and I think that is although it kind of dates the movie to the time.
Yes.
It also kind of lends it a certain authenticity and a kind of timeless thing. Cause,
It lends it a charm, doesn't it?
yeah.
It's a charm to it, and I think there's no charm to Night of the Living Dead 90. It's a straightforward kind of let's do a remake of Night of the Living Dead, but they did it really well. But there's no one was making this because they really wanted to make it.
Yeah, I mean, the thing is,
Do you know what I mean?
It's like I was saying earlier. You know, the Night of the Living Dead, the original, is rightfully regarded as a groundbreaking piece of work. That's the thing. You know, it leapt a barrier that wasn't there.
Yeah.
Before. Whereas this has come into a time where there's we've seen a lot of this kind of stuff before. It's very hard to you can't
Well,
expect
exactly.
this to.
I mean, Savini said, man, he said, by this time when I was doing Night of the Living Dead 90, you had zombies doing car commercials.
Yes.
And he was saying, how am I going to make zombies scary again? You know, how am I going to do it? So he gave them that, like, blank stare from Bullich and Burrell. The great. I mean, the effects in this movie are great. There's no getting away from it. They are great. It doesn't look like a movie from 1990. It looks like from a low-budget movie from 1990, sorry. It looks like a high-budget movie from 1990. The effects are great because the guys wanted to do it. They wanted to be involved in a remake of Night of the Living Dead. Yeah. You know? Because it's the beginning of it.
There's the whole kind of social sort of aspects to what Night of the Living Dead, the original, kind of had, and this really couldn't or didn't explore anything as significant as that. I mean, it's tumultuous as today as the 60s into the 70s was at the very least just as crazy as what we have now, if not worse in many respects. We had a whole shadow of nuclear war. We have a certain amount of that these days, but it's not in the same way. There's Vietnam going on. There was race riots going on. We have, again, what we've got now is not really quite the same as what they had then. But the thing is, they were exploring all those kind of ideas deliberately again, or by kind of like just implication. All those things were kind of there. So when Night of the Living Dead came out, it really resonated, and because of what it did, because it did a load of new stuff, it was an extraordinary experience, and that's very hard to kind of replicate that kind of significance. You can't just deliberately do that. Just go, I'll take that idea, I'll update it to now, and it will mean as much as what it did then.
Oh, aye. Well, they've tried to do it millions of times, haven't they? I mean, they really have. Well, not millions, but hundreds of times.
Yeah.
I mean, I remember watching can you remember the remake of Wes Craven's Nightmare on Elm Street in like 2009? They said, okay, we're going to update this so the bad guy's a child molester. We're going to remind people that Freddy Krueger is a child molester who's a killer, right? And it didn't work at all for the audience. All the audience was like, whoa, that's not Freddy Krueger. What are you talking about? But that's what happened with it, right? And I think that's kind of what happened with this remake a little bit. Yeah. He wanted to remind people what death was. But people already knew what death was because they'd seen it 100 times before. Yeah,
you're always going to struggle to kind of like replicate the impact of something which was, unique.
That's a cultural impact it had, yeah. Can't believe I've just compared Nightmare on Elm Street there to Night of the Living Dead. That's because I'm a few beers in that, listeners.
But, when you're talking about films that are kind of like that's the thing, I think, probably the word to sort of use when you're talking about the original compared to this is zeitgeist. And there was something about the original which really resonated. And another example of that would be a film like Threads.
Right.
It'd be harder to make a film like Threads now than it was back then.
Yes.
Because we're so much more aware of, those various things.
I'm a huge Carl Sagan fan. And he was a scientific advisor on Threads.
He was on The Day After.
Day After as well. Was he on that as well?
I'm sure The Day After was the one he did. I don't think he had anything to do with
the
Threads.
American one, the Jason Robots?
I can't remember if he's in it or not, but...
I remember the one. It's one of the where it's like, everything's going to be fine.
Well, yes. It was the line I think I finished off. The review was to describe kind of why I think Threads was better than The Day After. It was like Day After ends with the hug, Threads ends with the barely cut off scream of a woman looking at a dead baby.
I look at a baby in her arms. Just want to say, though, Brian, I do love Alice Cooper too in the comments. And Afterland, I agree. Brian was saying that Afterland. So I'm a big fan of Diary, and I get a lot of flack for it. But Captain, you've just said maybe you should watch the two Afterland. You've got Diary and Survival.
Yeah.
I'm a big fan of Diary. I am. I'm not so much a big fan of Survival,
God, Harry's a dick in this.
Sorry. No, it's all right. Anything to get me away from talking about Diary, because I am a really big fan of it.
What I would say is, don't let anybody, if you want to watch those films, don't let anybody persuade you not to. I have always tried to say, don't not watch a movie just because I don't like it. If I think a movie is a complete piece of shit, it's not me saying don't watch it. Make your own mind up with it, because you might find something in it. And I don't think they're the worst films on the planet. It's just
no, not by a long shot. I mean, even the last one, Survivals, it was so low budget, and the CGI is really bad in these last one, Survival.
And Kenneth Welsh is so over the top leprechaun Irish.
I don't.
Gore.
What are you talking about here, boys? It's really bad, isn't it? I know he's Irish accent. It's really. I mean, it's laughable. It is. But I think he was.
The zombies have come for their magic charms.
It is. It's. I didn't even know about Survival. It was similar to actually Night of the Living Dead 90. I was getting my shopping in Asda, and I looked. I just said I'm gonna just go to the DVDs and check them out. Romero's got a new film out. Nobody had even told us. I bought it off the shelf in Asda. Didn't get a theatrical release anywhere. It was straight to DVD. And this is the last film of a pioneer of horror. I couldn't believe it. And when I watched it, I could believe it. I couldn't believe why I bought it for £3 on a shelf in Asda.
See, this is the thing.
When it had just been released.
I think George Romero's last chance to make a really good zombie film was probably Resident Evil, when he was touted for that.
Yeah, I know, when he had Brad Ruffino and all that involved.
That could have been interesting.
Oh, I guess it does, man. MRAP's just saying it tries directly to emulate the original film, which it does a lot, almost shot for shot sometimes. And I think you're right. Maybe the actors just weren't given enough. I think that's the crack. Maybe they were... Well, we'll see before they should reel the performances in a bit, instead of being more over the top.
See, this is the thing. I mean, I think the movie struggles in some respects because it is up against the original. You know, nobody's not going to compare it to the original. You know,
but I mean, every now and again, man, you get it, don't you? Like Last of the Mohicans. I mean, nobody remembers the original 1930-odd Last of the Mohicans. They remember the Michael Mann, Daniel Day-Lewis, Madeline Stowe, Wes Studi. You know, brilliant film, Last of the Mohicans. People talk about Ben-Hur. No one remembers the original 22 Ben-Hur, or the really bad one that was made a couple of years ago. They remember the Charlton Heston Ben-Hur. You know what I mean? Remakes have always been a thing.
Yeah, no,
and we've always done them.
It's not an argument against remakes in general, because, you know, the Thing, as a for instance, is a great example of a remake that really did it much better than the original did. And probably people wouldn't really remember the original if it hadn't have been for
Christian Nyby and Howard Hawks.
And all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
What I'm saying is like kind of more that this movie, because the original was so incredibly iconic, you know, it is a very highly respected movie. That it's very difficult to live up to that, because people will always compare it to the original.
Oh, and it must have been on his shoulders, Savini's. It must have been.
It's a heavy load. It is.
It's a heavy load, it is. And if they weren't making all this noise, the zombies wouldn't be hearing them. They wouldn't. I've always got this gripe about this. You know, going back to me and Robin and the Black Bull and Wardley and Gateshead, thinking how Howard would block the wall up. They turn all the lights on, right? They're banging on the walls.
Yeah. Have you fuckers never heard of rubber mallets? No more really nails. Cool, right? That's what you need. It makes a great
with the squibs. Yeah, this is cool.
Yeah.
He shot Mr. Magruder. This is my favorite line in the film. You shot Mr. Magruder. It's coming up in a second. But I mean, the actress who plays Judy in this, she went on to do a lot of television. I remember seeing her on Hospital and stuff, General Hospital and things, and shows in the States. She did a lot of kind of television. And she was a Carnegie Mellon alumni as well. Yeah, the Pittsburgh film scene, like you say, it's a huge deal.
Yeah. And I think it still is. It's just, I think a lot. This is the kind of paradox of, I think, of filmmaking these days. Is a lot of these little cliques still exist. They've evolved a bit, but they still
well, we
exist.
had it not long ago with, Mumblecore, with Greta Gerwig and Noah Birnbaum and, what do you call that guy who did House of the Devil? He's just done Maxine. What's his name, man? Cabin in the Woods guy. He did the sequel to Cabin in the Woods. Man, what's his name? He's a really good director, and I can't remember his name. I can remember all of his movies, and I can't remember his name. But anyway, he was part of the whole Mumblecore thing, and it all kicked off, and they're all making Greta Gerwig's in House of the Devil. They were all friends, and they all kind of went on to make really great movies.
Yeah, but they get swamped, beneath all the kind of Hollywood films, and I think it's as much to do with. I've always kind of felt that the audiences have been so dumbed down over the years. It's got to be big special effects, and it's got to look like billions of dollars have been spent on it, and all this kind of stuff, and it's harder to find the audience in some respects, and especially when you look at kind of how things are distributed these days, how many movies you look at, things like Netflix or Amazon and
Ty West, thank you. Sorry, Glenn. Ty West, man. Thanks, Iris. Ty West. He's really good. The Valley of Violence was really good too. He's a great director. Sorry, Glenn.
Yeah.
That was on my brain. That I was thinking. Jeez, Iris.
when you've got all this kind of like digital platforms and all that kind of stuff, it's amazing how much shit you have to dig through to actually get to films that are made with kind of diligence and love, really.
Well, it's like, now there's a difference between content and movie making, I guess. There's content creation, there is, and we'll get it every Christmas. Hallmark make 50 Christmas movies at Christmas. That's not movie making, but it's content creation. Yeah. And I'll sit and I'll watch those movies at Christmas with me Twiglets and a couple of beers because I like Christmas time, right? But in that, I'll watch Scrooged. I'll watch Santa Claus the movie. What's the Chevy Chase one? National Lampoon's Christmas Vacation.
Vacation, yeah.
And they're movies, but mixed in with all that, there's content, right? And I think that's what it's like now. The market's flooded with content. It really is, but not many of them are movies.
No.
Most
of them are unwatchable.
Yeah, a lot of them are unwatchable. I would agree. And Night of the Living Dead 90 is not that. It's a well-made film.
Oh, yeah.
I honestly believe that everyone involved in this wanted to do it, especially the effects guys. Burrell and John Bullich. I think we lost John Bullich recently, the special effects guy. But it's obviously a group of friends wanting to remake an epic film from the 60s. And the Dupe homage, maybe it's too much homage, like what we're talking about before, the M-Rib, when we're saying that it's not quite different enough for it to be its own thing, which I think is what Savini wanted. He wanted it to be its own thing, but Romero said, no, let's do the original service.
And to be fair, the only reason this film was made because it's Night of the Living Dead.
And they were trying to make a few bucks.
Yeah, well, how do you make Night of the Living Dead your own?
I know.
It's a pretty ridiculously difficult task to do.
There's that, we were talking about the remakes before. There's Night of the Living Dead Resurgence. There's Night of the Living Dead Reanimated. There's Night of the Reanimated Dead. There's the Night of the 3D Living Dead that we were talking about before. It was Andrew Divoff who was in it with the guy. I was trying to remember his name. There was even a one with one of the actors from Hollyoaks. I remember sitting watching it, and there was a girl from Hollyoaks, the really famous one, did all the fitness videos. They did a remake of Night of the Living Dead with her in it. And I remember sitting watching it and thinking, this is all right, but why? and it's just because it's out of copyright and you can. But in a strange way, that worked in Night of the Living Dead's favor, that it was out of copyright. Yeah. And that anybody could distribute it. And that people did start doing copies of it and distributing it, and then it got word of mouth, and it was on late night TV, and I mean, that's part of the magic of it. It grew because it was everywhere. Because of that copyright issue.
Hmm.
Do you know what I mean?
Hmm.
And I think that really helped.
My mind
the word about it.
My mind sort of gets drawn to, when talking about remakes and all that kind of stuff. Suspiria is quite a good, interesting example.
It was interesting. I didn't enjoy it, but I thought it was interesting.
I did enjoy it. I mean, the thing is, a lot of people who
didn't like the bit with them playing with the copper's junk. I was thinking, what's this about, man? This isn't Suspiria.
It is a very different film.
It is a very different film.
That's the thing. In which case, you sort of go, it's kind of worthwhile because of that. You know, the fact that they took essentially the same plot and then kind of made their own film around it. It's a very different kind of experience.
Well, I mean, Tilda Swinton's always worth watching. I mean, no matter what she does, she's a great actress. And I mean, Jessica Harper popping up in there was... I remember sitting in the cinema, and when Jessica Harper popped up, I was like, it made us sit back and think, all right, I'm in the world of Suspiria now. Mm-hmm. And I did like that.
Yeah.
I like the Jessica Harper popping up, and like I say, Tilda Swinton's worth watching anything she does.
Yeah, I mean, for me, it was. I appreciated it as much because it didn't try to be the original.
Yeah.
It didn't kind of like go, okay, we've got to have the colory, very colourful kind of lighting and all that kind of stuff. It didn't need to do that. It just took the very basic ideas of the premise and then kind of played with it in its own way. So in that respect, it's worthwhile. And I think this movie kind of struggles with it because it's like it is trying very hard to be like the original.
It does. I mean, almost shot for shot sometimes. Almost shot for shot. But I mean, I'm thinking, watching it, what was that Romero's influence, and Tom Savini? Because, like I say, Tom Savini himself said he kind of turned into a yes man when he was making it. Because he just wanted to please everybody.
Yeah.
But I mean, you've got little moments like this.
Yeah.
The second unit stuff, and they're really nice, but they're also far too bright. I mean, we were talking about this before with, I think it was John O'Brien was saying, it's never this bright in the countryside. I mean, where's that light coming from? And look at the light in the background there.
Yeah.
It really takes me out of it.
It looks more like I don't know, something like Prey or doesn't it?
I've got to say, Brian just said in the chat, Mother of Tears was a letdown. I quite like it. I do. I quite like it.
I did not.
I know. I mean, you talked about it, Glenn. Where I liked the Udo Kier character, and I liked how he brought back his ex-wife, Daria Nickelodeon stuff in it. I liked the end as well with the all the nakedness and diving in the pits and stuff. I really did like it, but I mean, it's no Suspiria or Inferno. It definitely is not, and it's not on the same level as those movies. But I did enjoy it for what it was. I have to say, but I did like it. I had to say, I do.
For a movie that's tries so hard to be like the original, the differences in the movie tend to be kind of character based in this one.
Well, yeah, I mean, there was a naked woman in the first one. You had to have a naked guy in the second.
It's more stuff like, kind of like the relationship between Ben and Barbara. Is a very different kind of dynamic because at this point they're sort of becoming much more equals, whereas that only really happens literally in the last 3 minutes of the the original. So I mean, it is a very much more modern aesthetic in terms of how the characters are handled.
Oh, I think I agree. I agree, and I think he did give them. I mean, I think it goes. This is a story I heard on the commentary the other day. So, Tom Savini gets George Romero to come into his office. Tom Savini's got the whole film storyboarded on the office wall. The storyboards from the book that we were just looking at. Mm-hmm. And Romero says, "Oh, this is great, man, Savini. You've storyboarded the whole movie, but you've got 8 weeks of shooting here. We've got 4 weeks to shoot this film." And Savini says, "How do you know that's all going to take us more than 4 weeks?" And he says, "Because I've made movies before, dude. You've got far too much there. You can't shoot this in 4 weeks. So he said I started to pull stuff back, and I think Romero was a little bit more of a guiding force on this than what we were led to believe from the modern Savini interviews.
Yeah.
That I've listened to recently. I mean, he wasn't hanging over his shoulder directing him, but I think he was really saying, mate, this is a low-budget film. We've only got 4 million. You've got to do this. You've got to do that. We've got time. We've got this. We've got that. And I think Savini found it really stressful to deal with it all.
Yeah, it's undoubtedly a learning experience for him actually making a film like this, because now it's not the guy in the background. He's the guy at the steering wheel.
But I wish he'd done more. I wish this had been successful.
Yeah.
And I really hope he does. I really hope he does direct again. Because he's still got time, I really hope he does. Check out this. Do you recognize this guy from Day of the Dead?
Mm-hmm.
It's Miguel. The guy with a knife in him on the porch.
Ah.
It's Tim DeLeo, the guy who plays Miguel. It's the 1 second he's in the movie.
Jello.
I was going to say the next line there, but we'll make it. See, that would be the bad thing about doing Day of the Dead. Would just be seeing lines, wouldn't it?
Oh, we should do that.
Heads up. Oh, here we go.
Right, learn from the last time. Don't shoot the lock off the petrol pump.
This is great. I love that. It was like the zombie was going to shut the tailgate on the truck. I always loved that. This is really cool, this guy. The guy coming in, the zombie's scared. He's one of those zombies that scared us. The guy trying to get in the door. He reminded us of Bub with the double denim. But this is really cool. There's so much going on in this sequence. But if you ever read the book, there's a whole thing Savini had planned here. There's a zombie that Ben sets on fire. The zombie's supposed to come back half burnt, and he got his head blown off with a shotgun at the truck. And that footage was actually shot, and you can see it on a few of the special features. The zombie getting his head blown off, and it was so gory, almost like Scanners. It was like a proper head explosion, all like Dawn of the Dead. But they had to totally cut it out. The MPA totally got cut. So if you can see that behind Ben there, the Mary Celeste. The house is literally called the Mary Celeste.
Yeah. You know what? I hadn't noticed that.
All right.
It's a little on the nose now, I realise.
I know the Mary Celeste. But do you see what I mean about the original, how quick it was?
Mm-hmm.
This has taken a long time for them to get outside, to get onto the truck, to get to the gas pump. It all happened like bang, bang, bang in the original.
Well, I mean, that's the thing. The pacing on the original, the build-up was much, much slower. In this, it's a lot faster. It really does sort of get into the meat and potatoes. Like literally about 10 minutes faster.
But for me, this is one of the things that Savini really got wrong in this, was this gas pump sequence. I mean, hey man, who am I to say Savini got anything wrong? He's Tom Savini. But it's like, I love that guy.
Yeah.
But it was this is not anywhere near as atmospheric in the build-up as the original. I mean, you watch this, it's like, what? You've got, my jacket's caught. You know that scene I love, my jacket's caught? Mm-hmm. You get none of that in this. It's just bang, and it's gone. Watch. And I think it might have been because of the cuts by the MPA. It just happens all of a sudden.
It's a very anti-American film, isn't it? Because this American vehicle just does not work when it needs to.
Brian's just said he'd love to see a zombie with a walking stick in a movie.
Or a Zimmer frame.
Well, you've got one in Day of the Dead. He's right in the front towards the end. See how quick that happened? Yeah. There's no like, my jacket's caught. It just goes bang.
See, and that's the thing.
I really miss that bit.
When it comes to that kind of stuff, I love that kind of build-up of the original, because it is... You see each and every damn mistake that they make, and it's just like, no. And
like I say, well, that's it.
On this one, it's like, ooh,
Well, you shouldn't have shot that, mate. Bang, and it's over. Sorry to leave at this nail biting moment, but I've got to nip to the toilet. 2 seconds.
What you like? We've got a barbecue scene. Uh-oh. Where's my nearly dead daughter? See, for me, I quite like the one thing I do like about this is that Ben is separated from the other two in the scene nice and early, so he's not involved in all that kind of stuff, but he's still got to fight his way all the way back, and it kind of feels like there's much more of that kind of battle going on, which is kind of cool. And she does a really damn good zombie on this. Zombie child. But the one thing I found a little bit hokey is that kind of like cut to that trowel. Yeah, do they recreate the scene? That's a question. But yeah, in this case, it's like they've totally
I missed it. I ran so fast.
They avoided the using the trowel. I was just saying to the folks, it's like instead of having the trowel murder, they basically, it bites her neck and a little splat goes over it and it's hanging on the wall. Which I'm not sure if I appreciate or not.
Well, they had to get the trowel in there somewhere.
And they had to get it in there. But it's a bit of a member berry in this case, isn't it? Remember this?
You're right, Captain. Captain just said I left because I was a fraidy cat. You were right. I didn't want to see the barbecue. I've got to say, though, towards the end, Paul McCulloch's score is really nice. Not Paul McCulloch, Ian McCulloch's score is really nice. Sorry, it is Paul McCulloch. Ian McCulloch's the guy from Zombie Flesh.
Yeah, I was going to say, it's like, he's a very
Paul
talented
McCulloch.
fellow.
Ian McCulloch's the guy from Zombie Flesh. It is.
It is. And I remember when Lucio Fulci was disappointed that my hair was going.
That would be a great watch along. Flesh Eaters is an amazing film.
I think the greatest thing about Zombie Flesh Eaters is more kind of how it resonates with the time and the stuff that was around it. As a movie, it's cheesy as fuck.
It was so funny, man. A couple of years ago, I loved the main theme, the Fabio Frizzi theme.
Yeah.
Pardon me, the one that got released as a disco track in Japan. And anyway, I was like, oh man, I really love the soundtrack, and I managed to get a vinyl of it, the original.
Yeah.
And I paid like 60, 70 quid for it, original pressing of the soundtrack from 78 or whatever, 1980 when it was.
Mm-hmm.
So I got it, and the whole fucking, pardon me, the whole soundtrack was dung dung dugga dung. Dung dung dugga dung. Dung dung dugga dung. All it was the main theme and then some really bad calypso music.
My friend Mirko, he's like...
But it is a great soundtrack.
He's one of the guys that I work with on the Blu-rays and all that kind of stuff. And he does his own sort of remixes of these kind of things and his own original music and all that kind of stuff. Very heavily influenced by that kind of soundtrack, which is kind of cool.
Oh, Fritzy's great, man. I mean, Goblin were my favourites. I love Contamination and the stuff they did with Argento, but Fritzy's really good. Simonetti's fantastic by himself, too.
I got kind of yelled at a bit when I referred to Goblin as the Goblin. Which they are credited as in a couple of films along the way. So they had a few names. It's like the movies they kind of worked for.
Oh man, look at these two killing each other, you know? I mean, you can understand, I guess. It was like I was saying in the original when, Coop was just trying to look after his daughter.
Mm-hmm.
And then, somebody tried to shoot his daughter there, I guess. That was his frame of mind. Contamination, yes, Captain. Contamination is the one that's similar to his Alien 2 because they've got like 1 million chest bursters in Contamination. It's not just one; it's one chest burster after another. It's a really great soundtrack by Goblin. It's one of my favorites. Contamination.
It's one of those I look at that film
it's
and I
Cozy,
kind of
right?
wonder whether
Louis Cozy, who directed it.
Yeah, I wonder whether Cameron watched it before he made Aliens, because Contamination was made before and it has the Queen type alien
at the end, right when he's walking down the grate. Yes, yeah. And the copper gets killed. Sorry, the policeman gets killed and the girl survives the doctor. Yeah, I never thought about that. The beast with the eye.
Yeah,
big eye at the end.
And she's off.
That's it.
See, this is one of the
I'll come back for you.
This is one of the biggest changes, isn't it? Really. This is it.
This is where it stops being a remake and becomes its own film.
Yeah.
It's like Savini always said it was a remake with a bit of a sequel on the end. That's what he called it.
See, that's the other thing is also different. That he goes up into the attic and not into the basement.
Yep.
Which I think is a little bit of a joke.
Well, apparently, like I say, listen to the commentary. Savini said, Romero said, "Okay, at the end, he's going to go up into the attic," and Savini said, "We've never set up an attic." And Romero just went, "Nobody's going to care, man. There's an attic." Yeah, I do love Goblin as well, Brian. They're great. I was listening to Profondo Rosso today when I was exercising this morning. It's a great soundtrack. I know what you mean, Rip, there. It is a little bit strange, isn't it, the camera work towards the end? It jumps all over the place.
See, this is probably one of my favourite moments in the film, is when she just walks through there and she just points the gun at him and walks straight past them.
I know. Well, that's what she says, man. They're so slow, I could walk right by them.
Yeah.
And she's totally right. Oh, man. The captain's just mentioned Galaxy of Terror. Roger Corman's one of my idols in life. He produced Galaxy of Terror. Mm-hmm. I actually bought a Blu-ray of it recently, Galaxy of Terror. It was a really good one. I think it was from 88 Films. But yeah, Corman's cool, man. He gave a lot of people a start. Cameron, Coppola, Scorsese, Jonathan Demme. See, this stuff's pretty gnarly. I like this. And this is proper Patricia Tallman, really good acting.
Yeah. Yeah, it's the gravity of the moment as well. It's just like, that she's just like kind of like...
Yes, Captain, he is. Captain's just said Roger Corman's immortal. He is indeed. He's one of my idols. I love that guy. But see, here comes Romero again. The zombies have taken over.
This is very Dawn of the Dead in some respects, isn't it? Just with the soundtrack. Although it's a bit more gothic than the Dawn of the Dead soundtrack, but just them sort of...
I mean, I don't know. I bought the CD of this, the soundtrack, and it was... It is a little bit intrusive sometimes, I think, in the film. Whereas in the first one, I don't think it is. But I think sometimes in this, the soundtrack's a little bit intrusive. Not now, it's perfect now. But earlier on, I love this zombie, the one who comes through the window. Really scary zombie. Oh man, this is it. This is the best scene, I think. I mean, I'm almost sad this is almost over. I've really been enjoying this. Can somebody not find like Dawn of the Dead or Day of the Dead online, and we'll just continue going?
Find a super extended version of Dawn of the Dead that is on YouTube.
I'll be up for it. Let's go. Let's go.
God, make it 16-hour stream.
Would that be Guinness Book World of Records? New York Ripper soundtrack's really good, Brian. I really do like that. More than the film, in fact. It's New York
Oh.
Ripper was never one of my favorite Fulci films. It was I think when I was younger I found it too grisly. I mean now as an adult, I find New York Ripper fine. But when I was a teenager it was so aggressive. There was something that put us off a little bit about it. But it is a great soundtrack, and I do love the New York Ripper now. It is a good film. But the first couple of times I saw it, it was an upsetting film.
I just find it a bit too mean-spirited for my liking.
It is. That's now you hit the nail on the head. It is. It's a mean-spirited film, I think, and I think that's what put me off about it the first couple of times I saw it. I mean, there's some I really like. There's like the red herring moments that I really like in it, like when the guy walks away and turns around, you got the freeze frame, and I really like those stylistic choices that he did. But it's a mean-spirited film, I guess. That's a good way of putting it, Glenn, dude.
Yeah.
But it's a great soundtrack, Brian. Really good. Oh, this is it. This is my favorite scene. He smokes his last cigarette, spits it out for some stupid reason.
Oh, these things will kill you.
But he's dying anyway. What does he care? Yes, Captain, I did know that Corman and Romero are in Silence of the Lambs. Corman's the chief of the FBI, right? And Romero is a police chief just before they put him in the cage in Pittsburgh, I think, if I remember rightly. Chris Isaac's in that too, and Chris Isaac's one of my favorite singers. He plays one of the SWAT team guys.
Yeah, he gets about 2 seconds on screen.
He gets about 2 seconds. But I remember seeing it for the first time. I was like, that's Chris Isaac! Because I'm a massive Chris Isaac
Don't cut away, I've got a song to sing.
I know. Yeah, wicked game. What a wicked game to play. Oh, no, that's it. But no, it's great. It's Jonathan Demme. I think he was trying to give like kudos to all the people he admired. It's a great film, Silence of the Lambs. Great film. Yeah, I wouldn't spit the cigarette out, man. If it was my last cigarette, I would have smoked it till the end.
Yeah, but he's reveling in the irony of finding the gas pump key.
It's great, it is. It's really good. It's a really good fade out, that. Well, to be honest, I mean, that's the end of any relationship with Night of the Living Dead, apart from the thing he tries to do with Johnny, right?
Yeah.
When you see Johnny in 2 minutes and the glove in the back of the truck. But I mean, what do you guys think? Man, I mean, over the years, I've come to really like this remake. I really have. I really have. I'd love to have seen the film that it could have been, but I love it for what it is. It's Tom Savini's, very fine directing, I think.
Mm-hmm.
Great special effects from Bullich and what's the guy? Bullich and I have to read the names. I don't want to get it wrong. Everett Burrell, because the special effects are fantastic in this film. There he is. There's Johnny in the back of the truck. But that just doesn't pay off like the original did.
No, and I mean that's the thing. It there's a similar thing in that it's a little hard to recognise Johnny in the original, and they kind of reinforce it by her screaming out the name. In that, he looks completely different. It's
well, that's like a rubber doll of Bill Moseley, lying in the back of the truck. And
it's not like he came for her.
No.
And that is a big difference in terms of that sort of cycle, that ring being completed.
So this was interesting when I was listening to Tom Savini's commentary. That helicopter that comes over the road here to the camp. Tom Savini said a lot of people have asked him, "Is that supposed to be Galen Ross, Scotty Reiniger, Ken Forey, and Flyboy? What's that they called? They called Flyboy. Anyway, is that supposed to be a link to Dawn of the Dead?" And he said, "No, that's a police helicopter going over the hill." But I thought that was a pretty cool question to ask.
Yeah, it kind of makes sense in some respects. It would have been quite interesting.
Over the rednecks and stuff, eh?
Yeah, I mean, it would have been quite interesting if they had sort of recreated that moment.
I always thought it was pretty cool. And the fact that Tom Savini said people have asked him about it.
Yeah.
Is that the guys from Dawn of the Dead? That means the fans like us, all us guys on the stream, have been thinking, man, are all these films connected? Well, of course the films are connected. They're all part of the same universe. But
Yeah.
I just loved that. I thought that was pretty cool. So I thought I would mention it. Of course it's not. He said it's just a police helicopter. But man, wouldn't it be cool if it was?
Sometimes a cigar is just a cigar.
Exactly. Sigmund Freud. You're right, man. That is a good ending, I think.
Could have lifted a bit from Dawn there.
Oh, I totally, man. I don't know. There's something about this bit I don't like.
No, it's too much, isn't it? Because it's sort of with the original, it sort of like just ends and it leaves you on that moment. And
but you see, I mean, these guys hanging from the tree.
Yeah.
Honestly, everybody don't hate us. Really don't hate us. But I love the bit in Diary of the Dead when it ends with the zombie hanging from the tree, and they say they got out these two good old boys got out their best favorite shotgun and blew this zombie away, and they blow the zombie's head off, and it's just the zombie's like eyes hanging from the tree by her hair. I love that ending. but it always reminds us of this because when they got the zombies hanging from the trees and they're playing sport with them and stuff.
Yeah.
I really do like that ending of.
See, I think again, it's sort of going back from the difference in the style of presentation. I think of the original compared to this one, in that this ending is a much more kind of standard cinematic type of ending.
Oh, yeah.
Whereas the original, it has that shock value. Ben gets shot in the head. Go get the body, and then it's those awful stills. And
the producers said a lot of the people Romero tried to sell it to distribute said, change the ending and we'll distribute it. And he said no.
Yeah.
I mean, that's pretty powerful for a guy who's never made a movie. I mean, that's similar to Sylvester Stallone with Rocky. You know, no, I'm not doing it if I'm not in it. You know, and Romero did that.
Yeah.
No, if I don't have that ending, then you're not having it. Man, that was some gnarly effects there as well. Really good. It is cool, this coming up. I really like this the first time I saw it. Because you think that's the end and you think this is going to be the shot. And then as Iris said, man, old Otis comes back.
And I don't know how to feel about the character after that.
Oh, well, I probably would have done that, to be honest.
Yeah, I know he's the bad guy, yada, 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 but it's also a bit like, ooh, what has she just done?
And I'm a sucker for this tune. This is on the soundtrack. This is Paul McCulloch doing the soundtrack. This is like a proper 90s As It Comes song. This ending soundtrack here, but I really like it. There you go. And there's the guy that's Russo there in the back. Not Russo. That's the guy in the cowboy hat is Johnny, the original Johnny. Restrainer. See him dancing around. That's a blast, man. It is. I mean, so it's not the best movie ever, but it's a decent remake of Night of the Living Dead.
It's a very solid movie.
It is.
You know, if the original didn't exist, this would be a very good movie.
It would.
But you're always going to compare it to the original, and that's always the tricky part when it comes to a film like this, which tries to do a remake of a film which is so highly regarded.
I'm just gonna turn this up a little bit. I really love this last piece of music. It's so bad though. It's like obviously not a guitar. It's somebody emulating a guitar and a synthesizer. but I mean, I guess that's what he did for the whole movie, the soundtrack. But
yeah,
I do like the soundtrack and I do like the movie. For all we've given it, you know, I still like it. I do.
Yeah.
Still like it.
I mean, I'm not going to sit here and say it's a bad movie by any measure, but it is always that curse of it. Thing is, if we've seen people try to remake something like The Thing, when John Carpenter's is such a highly regarded movie. Some have done interesting things, like I think the remake of Suspiria is worthy at the very least. It's a worthy.
Man, for me, the Crazies, I love the Crazies remake. I
Yeah.
think that's worthy of the original by miles. I really like that remake.
Because it tries to do something slightly different.
Yeah.
This doesn't really kind of go far enough in trying to be different in some respects. And I think because the original...
Irish just said hadn't seen this film for years, man. It is a great... Well, not a great movie, but it's a good movie.
I think because this movie... the original movie was so heavily steeped in social kind of stuff, which was very, very important. And this movie doesn't really kind of resonate in the same way as the original could. So you can enjoy the special effects, you can enjoy the social updates in terms of the characters, stronger female lead, yada yada yada, all that kind of stuff.
Oh yeah, Tolman's great.
But the impact of this movie was just it's such a high mountain to try to climb.
Oh, totally, but it nails it. It does. I think it does. I mean, if anybody was going to make a remake of Night of the Living Dead, why shouldn't it be Tom Savini?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm glad it exists.
I'm glad it was Tom
Savini.
I am. I'm glad it was him.
Yeah.
I'm glad it wasn't some random director.
Yeah.
And
Eli
that
Roth.
makes it part of this Pittsburgh. It does. Sorry.
Could be Eli Roth making it.
I will.
In which case, it would just be a lot of people calling each other motherfuckers.
Exactly. Ty West, maybe. I couldn't remember before. I wouldn't have minded a Ty West remake, but man, it was. I mean, they're both good films. They are. I mean, obviously, the original for me it's one of my all-time favorite films, Night of the Living Dead, '68. But Night of the Living Dead '90 it's a good film.
Yeah, it's a good, solid film. It's very enjoyable.
Good film. It is.
It's very enjoyable.
And it's a film I often return to. It's one of those movies I'll watch and stick it on in the background while I'm doing something else. if you know what I mean.
Oh yeah, I've got movies I'll do that with.
All right.
Yeah. So I think we should probably call it an evening there anyway.
Oh man, I really want to keep going. I really love this.
We'll do another one sooner rather than later, and maybe we'll do a Dawn Day double bill or something. But for now, we shall call it an evening, and hope that you enjoyed it. So I've certainly enjoyed it. And...
Oh, man, I've loved it, and thank you, Captain, Enrib, Brian, Collector Adaman, all you guys. Iris. It's been a really good night for me. I've really enjoyed it. Thanks.
And
really cheers, man.
And just for those who aren't aware of where to find you, there is a
Here
link.
I am.
There is a link in the description to John's channel. But if you would just like to shill yourself for a moment,
Boneyard Cinema. You can find me on Boneyard Cinema.
It's a great channel. John does a really great analysis of movies. I must say I'm kind of in awe of some of the films, some of the reviews he's done. So go check that out.
Shucks.
Don't blow the moment, dude. Don't blow it. Anyway, we will say good night, folks. Thank you for joining. It's been a blast, this one in particular, and we'll get John back on here again, and probably do another George Romero double bill, and have a bit of fun with that. Might be Dawn of the Dead again. We have done it several times, but it'd be fun to do that with John. So take care, folks. Enjoy the rest of your weekend and have an absolutely lovely time. Take care of yourselves. See you next time.